HeyMax in Singapore, the complete strategic analysis. This is an independent analysis of HeyMax in Singapore, its home market, researched in August 2026 from public sources. It is the companion to my Hong Kong volume, and the two are designed to be read against each other. Nobody paid for either one, and nobody previewed them. Not HeyMax, not Singapore Airlines, not any bank, blogger, or platform named inside. The Hong Kong volume asked whether a Singapore loyalty startup could crack the most concentrated miles market in Asia. This volume asks the harder question, whether the home market that made HeyMax can keep it. Singapore is where the company was founded by 4 laid-off Meta engineers, where every product change is audited within days by the most sophisticated miles press corps in the world, and where the tightening of 2025 and 2026 removed partners, sunset redemptions, a paid membership that drew comparisons to banking without a license, played out in public, with the chief executive replying to critics by name. Same ground rules as before because they are the product. Every load-bearing claim traces to a source. Company claims are labeled as company claims. Estimates are labeled as estimates. And where I could not verify something, I say so plainly. 20 chapters. By the end, a verdict on Singapore and on the two-market thesis, and the specific evidence that would prove me wrong. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Why Singapore runs on miles. Singapore is the most generous miles-earning market in the world, attached to the most disciplined optimizer culture in Asia. And that generosity is now visibly contracting, which resets the math for every player in the game, HeyMax included. That is my core claim, and it is a deliberate inversion of the claim I opened the Hong Kong volume with. There, I argued that Hong Kong runs on miles because world-class demand meets stingy supply. A travel-obsessed city pushing $1 trillion Hong Kong dollars a year through its credit cards, and being paid a grudging mile for every 5 to 8 of them. Singapore is the mirror image. The supply here is lavish, the best baseline card earn I know of anywhere, and the demand side has organized itself into something closer to a profession than a hobby, complete with published exchange rates and a paper of record. Hong Kong's gap was underpayment. Singapore's story is subtler, and for a challenger, it is in some ways harder. What happens to everyone's strategy when a famously generous system starts quietly taking the generosity back? Here is the working. Start with the earn rates, because they define the market's floor, and they are, by global standards, extraordinary. An ordinary Singaporean with an ordinary miles card earns 1.2 to 1.4 miles per dollar on general local spending, uncapped. The named anchors have been stable for years. UOB's PRVI miles card pays 1.4 miles per dollar. DBS Altitude pays 1.3. CD Premier Miles pays 1.2. Set that against Hong Kong, where general spending earns a mile for every 5 to 8 Hong Kong dollars, roughly 0.125 to 0.2 miles per dollar. And the arithmetic, which I will label as my own, says a Singaporean manufactures something like 6 to 10 times more miles per dollar of everyday spending than a Hong Konger. That is the single most important structural difference between these two volumes, and I will return to it in Chapter 3, because it cuts in a direction that is not obvious. And 1.4 is only the floor. Above it sits a specialized tier of 4 miles per dollar cards, CD Rewards, HSBC Revolution, OCBC Rewards, Standard Chartered's Journey, paying quadruple rates on capped online and category spending for anyone willing to play the category games. Above that sits the 10 miles per dollar frontier. The DBS card, that is U, spelled YUU, pays up to 10 miles per dollar at the U ecosystem's supermarkets, convenience stores, and delivery apps, and it converts into KrisFlyer, or, notably for this series, into HeyMax's own Max Miles. And in 2025, Standard Chartered's Beyond card broke the general spend ceiling itself, paying 1.5 to 2 miles per dollar on local spending, uncapped, behind an annual fee of 1,635 Singapore dollars. Generosity in this market is stacked, tiered, and, for the diligent, compounding. Now the raw material feeding those rates. Singapore's card spending is tracked in the credit and charge card statistics of the Monetary Authority of Singapore, collected under MAS Notice 759, and the recent markers are emphatic. Quarterly billings have run above 20 billion Singapore dollars every single quarter since the third quarter of 2022, an annual run rate north of 80 billion, though I flag that yearly figure as my own inference from the quarterly threshold rather than a published total. There is a shadow number 2. Rollover balances hit a record of roughly 7.9 billion Singapore dollars in the third quarter of 2024. The Miles economy is funded, in part, by interchange on the disciplined and interest on the indebted, a fact worth remembering whenever a bank's generosity gets described as a gift. The travel demand that gives the miles their meaning is equally at full throttle. Changi Airport handled a record 69.98 million passenger movements in 2025, finally surpassing the 68.3 million of 2019, according to Changi Airport Group's own operating indicators. As with Hong Kong, this is not a market recovering from the pandemic. It is a market past its previous peak and still climbing. Record card billings, record passenger movements, maximum fuel for the earning, and maximum appetite for the burning. Then there is the culture, which is where Singapore stops resembling anywhere else. Hong Kong made miles chasing mainstream, Singapore made it rigorous. Aaron Wong has run Mileslife since May of 2015, and it functions today as something close to the market's central bank of information, card-by-card earn taxonomies, daily deal analysis, devaluation war rooms, and, crucially, a canonical published valuation of what a mile is worth. Buy below 1.5 cents. Refuse to redeem below 1.7. The community treats those two numbers as an exchange rate, and it arbitrates every offer in the market against them. Around Mileslife orbit Sethify, Pseudosmile and Mainly Miles, and beneath them sits the hardware zone Money Mind Forum, with its 19,000 threads of grassroots auditing. Mileslife's Telegram discussion group alone holds more than 35,000 members. When I say disciplined optimizer culture, I mean it literally. A mile in Singapore has a published price, and tens of thousands of people mark their decisions to it daily. But here is the fact from the research that most changed how I see this market, and it comes from Singapore Airlines' own KrisFlyer year-in-review data, as reported by Mileslife. The threshold to sit in the top 20% of KrisFlyer earners in 2025 was just 27,852 miles. Run the arithmetic, my label again. An ordinary, engaged Singaporean putting $2,000 a month on a card, earning 1.2 miles per dollar banks about 29,000 miles a year, which places them in the 80th percentile of a 10 million member global program on autopilot card spending alone. Read that both ways. It says the optimizer culture, for all its noise, is a thin elite layer sitting on a mostly casual base. The top 1% banked over 400,000 miles, while the median member barely registers. It also says something remarkable about this market's generosity. In Singapore, merely ordinary behavior outturns nearly everyone else in the program worldwide. The ceiling is high because the floor is, by global standards, absurd. Which makes the contraction now underway the defining fact of the moment. Call 2025 the year of the Nerf hammer, because Mileslife more or less did. The DBS Women's World Card had its 4 miles per dollar cap cut from 1,500 Singapore dollars a month to 1,000, its second cut in roughly a year. UOB's Ladies Solitaire cap fell to 1,500. UOB's Preferred Platinum was reportedly cut to 600, a figure I pass along with the word reportedly firmly attached. And the squeeze runs wider than category caps. American Express devalued its transfer rates by 22 to 25% in February of 2026. UOB terminated its KrisFlyer auto conversion program in April of 2026. CD slashed the Prestige card's welcome bonus and multiplied its minimum spend sevenfold in July of 2026. Even Singapore Airlines' own HeyFlyer Amex, its card for small businesses, was nerfed in 2025. The fee up 30%, earn rates down, the lounge benefit gone. Looming over all of it, KrisFlyer itself devalued its award charts in November of 2025 and introduced dynamically priced awards, which gets a chapter of its own. None of these cuts is fatal alone. Together, they mark a direction. The world's most generous miles market is repricing itself downward, bank by bank, cap by cap. What does this mean for HeyMax? 3 things. First, HeyMax's home market is simultaneously the most miles-literate and the most contested on Earth. The education problem that Hong Kong solved through culture, Singapore solved through infrastructure. But that same infrastructure prices every new offer within a weekend, against a published benchmark, in front of 35,000 Telegram members. There is no soft launch at home, and this volume will show that HeyMax has learned that lesson repeatedly. Second, the contraction is HeyMax's tailwind, properly understood. Every cap cut and every transfer devaluation lowers the baseline that a Singaporean earns without trying, and that raises the relative value of an incremental layer stacked on top of card spending, which is precisely the product HeyMax sells. The Nerf hammer does HeyMax's marketing for it, slowly and for free. Third, the generosity that remains is the competitive bar. As I will argue in Chapter 3, an aggregator in Singapore must beat abundance rather than scarcity, and that is a genuinely harder brief than the one HeyMax faces in Hong Kong. Singapore runs on miles because it is paid magnificently to run on them. The strategic question of this volume is what happens, and who wins as that pay gets cut. Chapter 2, KrisFlyer's Kingdom. KrisFlyer is a stronger home monopoly than Cathay's, 10 million members, doubled in 3 years, sitting inside the world's largest airline alliance. And unlike Cathay, Singapore Airlines runs its own everyday lifestyler machine and runs it competently. That is my core claim, and it should worry anyone building a loyalty business in Singapore more than any bank, Superapp, or cashback rival I will cover later in this volume. In the Hong Kong volume, I described Cathay's grip on its home market as near total at the aspirational level, but ragged at street level. The flag carrier owned the dream and neglected the daily earn. Singapore Airlines owns both. This chapter maps the kingdom, its scale, why its gravity exceeds Cathay's, and how deliberately its plumbing is designed so that every stray point in the city eventually flows to the throne. Here is the working. Start with scale, because the numbers are genuinely imperial. KrisFlyer crossed 10 million members in March of 2025, per Singapore Airlines' own announcement, having doubled in roughly 3 years, which means the program added 5 million members in the time it took most loyalty schemes simply to survive the pandemic. SIA now styles it a lifestyle rewards program with more than 1,700 brand partners. 10 million members, set against a resident population of about 6 million, tells you the membership is heavily international, though Singapore remains its densest and most engaged base, and I label that an estimate since SIA publishes no geographic split. The burn side is just as striking. Members redeemed 82 billion KrisFlyer miles in 2025, up from 80 billion the year before, per SIA's year-in-review data as reported by Mileslife. Do the arithmetic at the program's own 1 cent floor, my calculation, not SIA's, and that is at least 800 million Singapore dollars of value flowing out to members in a single year. Around 600,000 members engaged across multiple SIA group entities in 2025. This is not a frequent flyer scheme with a shop attached. It is a currency zone. Now the comparison at the heart of my claim. Cathay's monopoly in Hong Kong rests on emotional gravity and the One World network. KrisFlyer's rests on 3 harder things. First, the banking layer. KrisFlyer is the #1 transfer partner of every miles issuing bank in Singapore. And for most of them, it is very nearly the only one. DBS, UOB, and Standard Chartered carry just 2 or 3 transfer partners each, and KrisFlyer heads every list. The entire card ecosystem I praised in Chapter 1 is, seen from altitude, a drainage basin. 1.2 to 1.4 miles per dollar, across 80+ billion in annual billings, most of it plumbed by default toward one program. Second, alliance breadth. KrisFlyer sits inside Star Alliance, the largest alliance at roughly 25 carriers, which gives members redemption reach across United, ANA, Lufthansa, Thai, and Turkish. Third, and this is the moat Cathay cannot match right now, the prize at the top. SIA releases premium cabin saver space on its own aircraft to its own members, space that partner programs cannot book. Suites and first-class redemptions are the cultural apex of the entire Singapore Miles game, and there is exactly one currency that buys them properly. A monopoly whose scarcest good is exclusive to itself does not need to be generous. It needs only to be inevitable. Then there is the lifestyle machine, the part of the kingdom Cathay never competently built at home. Kris Plus began life as KrisPay in July of 2018, an airline-branded micropayment wallet, and was rebuilt into a lifestyle rewards app that today spans 614 earn brands across more than 1,700 outlets in Singapore, by mainly Miles running Tally and SIA's own outlet claim, respectively. Members pay by QR code and earn miles on dining, retail, and wellness at rates that once averaged over 6 miles per dollar and stacked on top of credit card earn. The empire keeps annexing adjacent territory. Pelago, SIA's tour-end activities arm, was folded into Kris Plus in October of 2024, and as I write in August of 2026, the app is running Pelago promotions at 12 miles per dollar. There is even an arm for small business spending, HeyFlyer, extending KrisFlyer economics into corporate wallets. Whatever else I will say about this machine, and Chapter 5 is where I dissect it as a competitor, the coverage is real. SIA competes for the everyday transaction in its home market under its own brand with its own currency. Cathay, as the Hong Kong volume showed, largely left that ground to others. Look closely at the plumbing, though, and you see how deliberately the kingdom is designed. KrisPay miles earned in Kris Plus do not simply sit there. Each transaction's haul must sweep to KrisFlyer within 21 days, a step now automated, or it strands in the app and expires within 6 months. In July of 2025, SIA standardized the value of a mile at exactly 1 cent across Kris Plus, Kris Shop, Pelago, and Scoot redemptions. The pattern is consistent. Peripheral currencies are kept deliberately weak and mortal, while the core currency is essential and eternal, or at least 3 years eternal, since KrisFlyer miles themselves expire. Every rule pushes value toward the throne, and keeps the member checking one balance. This is competent empire design, and I use the word competent advisedly, because competence here means coverage and control, not generosity. The same July 2025 restructuring that set the 1 cent standard also cut more than 250 merchants from Kris Plus, and dropped its average earn rate by roughly 40%, from 6.2 miles per dollar to 3.3. And in November of 2025, KrisFlyer devalued its award charts and introduced dynamically priced awards. The kingdom taxes its subjects. Chapters 4 and 5 take up what that taxation means. For now, the point is simpler. The incumbent's machine ratchets value downward from a position of strength because it can. I should flag the asymmetries honestly. KrisFlyer's scale numbers are SIA's own, though the 10 million milestone and the redemption figures come through formal disclosures rather than marketing puffery, and Mileslife has audited the year-in-review data in public. The claim that Singapore is the densest member base is my inference. And the comparison with Cathay carries a caveat. Cathay's weakness at street level partly reflects Hong Kong's brutal earn economics, not just neglect. But the structural read stands. Cathay's kingdom leaks, Hong Kong's banks, as that volume showed, run multi-partner transfer menus, and the street-level earn game there belongs to whoever wants it. Singapore's kingdom barely leaks at all. The banks default to KrisFlyer, the Apex redemption is exclusive, and the incumbent itself patrols the everyday earn ground. What does this mean for HeyMax? Start with the fact I consider the single most load-bearing in this entire volume. Max miles cannot be converted into KrisFlyer miles. Mileslife stated it flatly in August of 2026, and the only workaround is an unfavorable indirect path through the U program. That is U, spelled YUU, at a ratio of roughly 0.83 to 1. A discount no self-respecting Singapore optimizer accepts as a routine rail. HeyMax operates in the world's densest KrisFlyer catchment without a pipe into KrisFlyer. Contrast Hong Kong, where HeyMax launched in November of 2025 with Cathay itself as the anchor partner, the flag carrier inside the tent from day one. That contrast is the strategic geometry of this whole series. Abroad, HeyMax allied with the Incumbent. At home, the Incumbent runs its own competing machine, will never partner. Why would a currency zone admit a rival mint? And, as Chapter 4 will show, it has already begun gating third-party access to its infrastructure. So HeyMax's position in Singapore is what I would call complementary with a ceiling. It cannot be the way Singaporeans reach the prize currency. It can only be the best home for everything the kingdom does not control, the 20 transfer partners it still holds at 1-to-1, with no fees, precisely while every KrisFlyer adjacent rail in the market devalued between 2024 and 2026. The kingdom is strong, and it is not going to fall. The available strategy is to own the territory outside its walls, and the rest of this volume tests whether that territory is big enough to build a company on. Chapter 3: The Card Game Singapore Rules. Singapore's card earn runs 6 to 10 times richer than Hong Kong's, and that, paradoxically, makes an aggregator's job harder, because in Singapore, HeyMax must beat generosity, not scarcity. That is my core claim, and it is the strategic consequence of the structural fact I flagged in Chapter 1. In the Hong Kong volume, I argued that a marginal mile is precious where card earn is grudging. Layer 1 extra mile per $100 onto a market that pays a mile for every 5 to 8 Hong Kong dollars, and you have moved the needle. Run the same play in Singapore, where the baseline is 1.2 to 1.4 miles per dollar, uncapped, and the ambitious are farming 4 to 10, and that same marginal mile is a rounding error. To see exactly how high the bar sits, you have to walk the ladder rung by rung, because the Singapore card game is the most elaborate in the world, and every rung is a competitor for the attention HeyMax needs. Here is the working. The bottom rung is the general spend floor, and it is where most of the market lives. UOB PRVI miles pays 1.4 miles per dollar locally and 2.4 overseas. DBS altitude pays 1.3 and 2.2. CD Premier miles pays 1.2 and 2.2. All uncapped, all on ordinary spending, with points that, in the case of DBS and CD, never expire. Hong Kong's general spend equivalent, at 5 to 8 Hong Kong dollars per mile, works out to roughly 0.125 to 0.2 miles per dollar. The 6 to 10-fold gap is my arithmetic, but the inputs are the published rates on both sides. In 2025, the floor itself cracked upward. Standard Chartered's Beyond Card broke the long-standing ceiling of 1.4, paying 1.5 to 2 miles per dollar on local spending, uncapped, at the top tier of a card costing 1,635 Singapore dollars a year. And it was still running welcome offers of 100,000 miles into the middle of 2026, per Mile Lion. When the entry price of the market is a fee-funded arms race above 1.4 uncapped, an aggregator cannot win by offering a slightly better earn rate. There is no slightly better left to offer. The second rung is the specialized 4 miles per dollar tier, the optimizer's bread and butter. CD Rewards pays 4 miles per dollar on online spending excluding travel, capped at 1,000 Singapore dollars a statement month. HSBC Revolution pays it on capped online and contactless spending. OCBC Rewards covers shopping categories. Standard Chartered's Journey covers online groceries and food delivery. The game here is cap Tetris, spreading categorized spending across a wallet of cards so that every capped bucket fills and none overflows, and Singaporeans play it with spreadsheets. This is also the rung being most actively sawn off, as Chapter 1 previewed. The DBS Women's World Cards cap was cut from 1,500 Singapore dollars a month to 1,000, the second cut in about a year. UOB Ladies Solitaire came down to 1,500. UOB Preferred Platinum reportedly came down to 600. The reportedly is mine to flag. The NERF wave matters to this chapter's argument for a specific reason. Every cap cut shrinks the optimized ceiling, which quietly improves the relative worth of any earn layer that stacks on top rather than competing underneath. The third rung is the 10 miles per dollar frontier, and it deserves close attention because HeyMax is unusually built into it. The DBSU card, that is U, spelled YUU, pays up to 10 miles per dollar or an 18% rebate at the U ecosystem's merchants. 7-Eleven, Cold Storage, Giant, Guardian, Foodpanda, and more, including Simply Go transit rides. The mechanics are demanding, stacked bonus tiers, a minimum of 800 Singapore dollars a month spread across 4 merchants, a bonus cap reached at roughly $823 of spending. But the payoff is the richest sustained earn rate in the market. And crucially, U points convert instantly into either KrisFlyer or Max Miles. Mileslife calls the DBSU card, quote, a dedicated Max Miles earner, unquote, a sentence worth pausing on. A major local bank's highest earning card treats a 3-year-old startup's currency as a first-class redemption option alongside the national flag carriers. And the rail keeps deepening. DBS opened conversion of DBS points into U points in August of 2026. The fourth rung is where the points go, the transfer hubs, and here the hierarchy is stark. HSBC is the breadth leader, with 16 airline partners and 4 hotel programs. CD runs about 10 airlines at a uniform ratio. Amex carries 8, though it devalued its transfer rates by 22 to 25% in February of 2026. OCBC carries 6. And the mass market giants, DBS and UOB, carry just 2 or 3 each, KrisFlyer first among them. Friction is part of the product. UOB charges roughly 27 Singapore dollars per conversion and terminated its KrisFlyer auto conversion program in April of 2026. CD's points do not pool across cards. HSBC converts free and instantly. Into this table, Milesife's April 2026 transfer partner roundup inserted one entity that is not a bank at all. HeyMax, whose roster stands at 20 programs as of August 2026, after its own June cuts, most at 1-to-1, with no fees and a modest minimum. On breadth, HeyMax now sits above every bank except HSBC. That is the aggregator's genuine structural card, not a better earn rate, a wider exit. The last rung is the one that makes Singapore truly singular. Miles here have a manufacturing cost and a published market price. CD Payall lets you buy miles at roughly 0.8 cents each, by carding rent, tax, and insurance-shaped payments. CardUp runs at about 1.07 cents. The routine manufacturing ladder tops out around 1.35 cents. Against that sits Mileslife's canonical valuation framework, 1.5 cents as the buying ceiling, 1.7 cents as the redemption floor, which the community wields as a market-clearing price. Every proposition in this market, HeyMax's included, is marked against those 2 numbers within days of launch. In Hong Kong, I noted that no authoritative per-mile benchmark exists. In Singapore, the benchmark is Canon, and it disciplines sellers as much as buyers. Now assemble the paradox. In Hong Kong, HeyMax's earn proposition lands on parched ground. Card earn there is mean, so a max mile per dollar reads as a windfall. In Singapore, the same proposition lands on the most saturated earn landscape on Earth, 1.4 uncapped at the floor, 4 miles per dollar in the categories, 10 at the U merchants, and manufacture on demand at 0.8 cents for anyone with a rent bill. A max mile offered as a substitute for card earn loses to the banks every single time, and the audience holding the spreadsheet knows it before HeyMax's marketing copy loads. The only positions that work are the ones that stack. Earn that sits on top of whatever card is in hand, and exits that the banks cannot match. It is no accident that HeyMax's most structurally sound Singapore assets are exactly those shapes. The Card Maximizer, built on the Visa, offers platforms card linking since May of 2024, layers offers and commute campaigns of 3 to 6 miles per dollar on top of 10 Singapore Visa cards. And the U and chocolate finance arrangements made Max Miles a payout currency of other issuers' generosity, rather than a rival to it. The Hong Kong Visa commute campaign, I should note, was this Singapore rail exported. The home market built the machinery, even where it has yet to fully cash in on it. What does this mean for HeyMax? 3 rules of the Singapore card game, as I read them. First, never compete with the card, complete it. HeyMax's economics cannot outpay institutions funding 1.4 uncapped from interchange. Its lane is the incremental layer above the card and the flexible exit beyond the bank, and everything in the product that conforms to that shape has worked. Second, the winning precedent is denomination, not promotion. The DBSU card made Max Miles a currency that other people's generosity pays out in, and that is worth more than any earn campaign HeyMax could fund itself. The strategic follow-on, which Part 7 of this volume takes up, is to replicate that shape with more issuers. Third, respect the published price. The 1.5 and 1.7 cent benchmarks mean that every Max Miles proposition faces an instant, public, quantitative verdict. In this market, you do not launch offers. You submit them for peer review. The generosity of Singapore's card game is the moat HeyMax must swim across at home. And the same nerf wave now draining that moat, cap cut by cap cut, is slowly lowering the water level in HeyMax's favor. Chapter 4, The Burn Problem. KrisFlyer devalues on a roughly 3-year cadence, and November of 2025 added dynamically priced awards to the chart, which means the very asset Singaporeans optimize for is being steadily eroded by its issuer. That is a real wedge for a challenger, though a softer one than Hong Kong's. And Singapore Airlines crackdown on award search in July of 2026, triggered in part by HeyMax's own tool, tells me the incumbent knows exactly where the pressure is coming from. That is my core claim, and this chapter is about the burn side of the ledger, because chapters 1 and 3 established that Singaporeans earn miles magnificently, and the strategic question is what those miles are actually worth by the time their owners try to spend them. Here is the working. Start with the cadence, because it is the pattern that turns individual devaluations into doctrine. KrisFlyer cut award values in 2017, again in 2019 on the partner chart, again in July of 2022, and again in November of 2025, roughly every 3 years, each round in the 5 to 15% range. The 2022 round raised Saver Awards about 10% on average, by SIA's own statement, and killed paid stopover awards. Members have absorbed the lesson the way markets absorb inflation expectations. The community's standing doctrine, preached across Mileslife and its peers, is earn and burn. Miles are a depreciating currency with a 3-year expiry, to be spent, never hoarded. A 10 million member program, whose most sophisticated users treat the currency as structurally melting, is a program with a latent trust problem, however patient its members look. Now the November 2025 round in detail, because its texture matters more than its headline. Announced on the 25th of August, 2025, and effective the 1st of November, it was, and I will say this plainly, following Milesline's own verdict, restrained by international standards. Saver Awards rose about 5% on average, and some short-haul economy awards actually fell around 5%. Malaysia and Indonesia dropped from 8,500 miles to 8,000. But the increases clustered where the aspirational value lives. Advantage awards rose about 15%, and the worst single sell was Zone 10 business class, Africa, the Middle East, Turkey, jumping from 56,500 miles to 68,000, a 20% hike. The grandfathering rules, which preserved old pricing for anything ticketed by the end of October, produced a documented pre-deadline booking rush that Mileslife covered as a last call. Singaporeans did not shrug at this devaluation. They sprinted through the closing door. The structural change, though, sat beside the percentages. November 2025 introduced Access Awards, inventory priced dynamically by demand, floating beyond the fixed Saver and Advantage charts. I regard this as the most important single development in the Singapore Miles market in years, and the community flagged it immediately, because everyone who watches loyalty knows this script. Dynamic pricing arrived in the big American programs as a supplement, and became, within a few revaluation cycles, the whole program, award charts abolished, miles pegged to cash prices, the aspirational arbitrage dead. There is no evidence SIA intends to go that far, and its restraint in 2025 argues genuine care for the program's franchise. But a dynamic tier is a ratchet. It never converts back into a chart, and every future devaluation can now happen silently, one search result at a time, with no announcement to spark a booking rush. The chart devaluations are the visible tax. Access is the invisible one. Erosion of price is only half the burn problem. The other half is erosion of availability, and here the evidence predates the devaluation. By late 2023, Mileslife was reporting that even solitaire PPS Club members, the program's most valuable customers, were increasingly settling for pricier Advantage awards because saver space had thinned. The drivers are structural. Load factors above 88%, wide-body delivery delays constraining capacity, partner programs booking against the same space, and, the irony at the heart of this volume, ever easier mile accumulation, swelling demand for a fixed pool of seats. The 2022 devaluation even narrowed the price gap between Saver and Advantage deliberately, nudging members toward the dearer tier. SIA does operate a pressure valve. Spontaneous Escapes, announced on the 15th of each month, offers 30% off selected Saver awards for next month travel, non-changeable and non-cancelable, and since November of 2025, a category of its own. It is a clever instrument, distressed award inventory, moved at a discount to the flexible. But a monthly clearance sale is a symptom as much as a remedy. The everyday chart is tight enough to need one. Meanwhile, the floor of the program was deliberately raised. In July of 2025, SIA standardized cash equivalent redemptions at 1 cent per mile across SIA and Scoot tickets, Kris Shop, Pelago, and Kris Plus, up from as little as 0.67 cents. For the casual majority, this was a genuine improvement, and I credit it as such. But note what it does to the program's internal geometry. Flight redemptions still run 2 to 8 cents per mile at their best, so the entire engine of the game is the spread between the 1 cent floor and the premium cabin dream. Every devaluation and every vanished Saver seat narrows that spread from above. Compress it far enough, and KrisFlyer converges toward a 1 cent rebate scheme, at which point the disciplined Singaporean, armed with Mileslife buying ceiling of 1.5 cents and redemption floor of 1.7, rationally defects to cashback. The burn problem is not that miles become worthless. It is that they trend toward being worth exactly 1 cent, which, in this market, amounts to the same disillusionment. I called this wedge softer than Hong Kong's, and I should defend that honestly. Hong Kong's wedge is on the earn side. The whole market is underpaid every day, so a challenger paying properly is instantly legible. Singapore's wedge is on the burn side, and it is slower and blunter. The November 2025 cuts were restrained. The 1 cent floor cushions the casuals. Spontaneous Escapes cushions the flexible. And Singaporeans are still, as Chapter 1 showed, the best paid earners on earth. Nobody in Singapore wakes up angry about their miles. The erosion is a drip, a 5% chart move here, a vanished Saver seat there, a dynamic price that is somehow never the old chart price. Wedges like this move markets over years, not quarters. But the incumbent's own behavior tells me the pressure is real, and this is the sharpest fact in the chapter. In July of 2026, SIA imposed award search restrictions on its own website. Members now need a minimum balance, community established at around 1,500 miles, never officially disclosed, merely to search for awards, with those below it shown an error and steered toward an AI flight recommender. SIA's stated reason was protecting its systems from automated and repetitive search activity, and Mileslife reporting named the load sources: Seats.Aero, Point.me, and HeyMax's own award companion, which ran live searches across thousands of users' accounts. Sit with that for a moment. The flag carrier of Singapore re-engineered its public award search partly because of a tool built by a 30-person startup in its hometown. Incumbents do not gate infrastructure against irrelevances. The crackdown is simultaneously the strongest third-party validation HeyMax has ever received and an unambiguous statement of intent. The kingdom has noticed the people selling maps of its walls, and it is raising them. What does this mean for HeyMax? 3 conclusions. First, the burn problem is HeyMax's long argument, and it compounds without HeyMax spending $1. Every chart devaluation, every access price that stings, every fruitless saver search is an advertisement for multi-program optionality, the exact pitch of a currency holding 20 transfer partners at 101. Second, the argument has a hole in it, and honesty requires me to restate it. Disillusioned KrisFlyer members cannot carry their max miles into KrisFlyer, so HeyMax monetizes the disillusionment only by converting Singaporeans to alternatives. Star Alliance seats through other programs it still carries, other airlines, hotels. That is a genuine product path, but it asks for a behavior change, not just a better rate, and behavior change is slow. Third, the crackdown draws the strategic boundary in ink. SIA will close any gate that HeyMax's tooling forces open, so the Singapore strategy must run on partnership rails, bridges in the style of the U program, and issuer deals, rather than on scraping the incumbent's infrastructure. The burn problem is real, it is worsening on a schedule, and it is the closest thing HeyMax has to a structural ally inside the kingdom's own walls. But it is a slow ally, and the incumbent has already shown it will fight for the walls. Chapter 5, Kris Plus and the first-party incumbent. The most dangerous competitor HeyMax faces in Singapore is not a cashback giant or a Superapp. It is the incumbent's own app, Kris Plus, which contests the same merchants, the same in-store moment, and pays out in the one currency HeyMax cannot issue. And yet in July of 2025, that incumbent devalued its own product by roughly 40%, handing HeyMax the best competitive gift it has received at home. That is my core claim, and both halves of it need arguing. Why a first-party lifestyle app outranks every third-party rival on my threat list, and why its self-inflicted wound matters more than its scale. Here is the working. Start with why the first-party shape is the dangerous one. Chapter 2, establish the geometry. Max miles cannot convert into KrisFlyer, so at the moment a Singaporean stands at a cafe till, deciding which app to scan, Kris Plus pays the prize currency directly, and HeyMax pays a currency that leads anywhere except the prize. Kris Plus competes on the 2 axes hardest for a startup to attack. The first is trust. It is Singapore Airlines, a brand with which no fintech in the city can trade blows. The second is instant gratification, miles landing in the app on the spot. In the Hong Kong volume, the equivalent chapter had a different ending. There, the incumbent airline chose to sit inside HeyMax's tent, anchoring its November 2025 launch. In Singapore, the incumbent built its own tent, a 5-minute walk from HeyMax's office, and it will never partner. The research brief behind this volume put it crisply: Kris Plus and Pelago are an incumbent threat, not a partnership target. Now the history, because Kris Plus is an older and more deliberate machine than its App Store listing suggests. It launched in July of 2018 as KrisPay, styled the world's first airline-branded micropayment wallet, complete with era-appropriate blockchain messaging, and it was, at launch, a bad product. Conversions ran one way, from KrisFlyer into KrisPay, at values around 0.67 to 0.95 cents per mile. A machine for destroying miles at the till. SIA did something incumbents rarely do. It noticed, and it rebuilt. Relaunched as Kris Plus around 2020 and 2021, the app inverted the proposition from burn to earn. Pay any participating merchant by QR code, earn KrisPay miles instantly, sweep them to KrisFlyer. It is worth noting what idea this actually is. Paying consumers airline miles for everyday dining and retail is precisely the model that the Singapore startup Mileslife pioneered in 2017. and died of by 2019. Kris Plus is Mileslife's idea attached to an airline's balance sheet, the one owner for whom miles are an in-house liability rather than a retail purchase, which is why it is the version that survived. The machine as it stands is formidable on coverage. As of the middle of 2026, Kris Plus spans 614 earn brands, by mainly miles running tally, across more than 1,700 outlets, by SIA's own claim, with over 1 million downloads on the verified Google Play listing, and a footprint reaching Sydney and Melbourne. At its peak in 2023, the proposition was genuinely lethal to third-party alternatives. Average earn across merchants of 6.2 miles per dollar, headline rates higher, stackable on top of credit card earn. A 4 miles per dollar card plus a 6 miles per dollar Kris Plus scan was double-digit earn on lunch, and the optimizer community treated the stack as core toolkit. The empire has kept feeding it. Pelago, SIA's tour and activities arm, folded into Kris Plus in October of 2024, and in August of 2026, the app is running Pelago promotions at 12 miles per dollar. Whatever I am about to say about the devaluation, the reader should hold this fact alongside it. SIA still spends real money on this machine when it wants to. Then came July of 2025, and the Incumbent shot its own product. As Mileslife documented, SIA cut earn rates at more than 250 Kris Plus merchants in one restructuring. The 9 miles per dollar tier collapsed from 95 merchants to 4. The 6-mile tier fell from 114 merchants to 48. Average earn dropped from 6.2 miles per dollar to 3.3, a 40% cut, executed as the mechanical consequence of SIA standardizing the value of a mile at 1 cent across its group. And the friction stayed even as the pay fell. Each transaction's miles must sweep to KrisFlyer within 21 days, automation now handles it, or they strand and expire within 6 months. This is the pattern Chapter 2, named as the Kingdom's operating principle. A first-party lifestyle program exists to serve the airline's economics, and the airline sets the exchange rate. When strategy said reach, rates were subsidized upward. When strategy said standardize at 1 cent, rates fell 40% overnight, and 250 merchants worth of earn quietly vanished. No committee at a startup could devalue that hard and survive the news cycle. The Incumbent did it in a press release footnote. Why is this a gift for HeyMax? 3 reasons, in ascending order of importance. First, arithmetic. The single best in-store earn machine in Singapore just halved its average payout, at the precise moment HeyMax's transfer roster, outside KrisFlyer, held at 1-to-1. The relative gap between scanning Kris Plus and earning max miles narrowed by the Incumbent's own hand. Second, audience. The people who noticed are exactly the people HeyMax needs. The casual Kris Plus user shrugged. The optimizer who watched 6.2 become 3.3, tier by tier, in Mileslife tables, is now shopping for the next stack. And HeyMax's own dining surface. The CHOP integration, paying 75 max miles per booking since January of 2025, contests precisely that moment. Third, and most valuable, the devaluation proved HeyMax's argument better than HeyMax ever could. The case for an independent, multi-partner currency rests on the claim that single-program loyalty leaves you exposed to one issuer's whims. In July of 2025, the most trusted loyalty brand in Singapore demonstrated that claim, publicly, with numbers. Honesty demands I mark the limits of the gift, and they are substantial. Kris Plus devalued 40%, and there was no exodus, grumbling in the community, then adaptation, because the currency is the moat, and the currency survived untouched at the till. That is a sobering demonstration of what first-party trust buys. An Incumbent can cut its product nearly in half and keep the funnel, where a startup doing the same would face. And, as Chapter 11 will show, HeyMax's own tightening arc did face cries of bait-and switch and worse. Second, the wound is reversible. Merchant-funded rates that the airline chooses to subsidize for strategic reach can return whenever strategy dictates, and the August 2026 Pelego promotions at 12 miles per dollar show the machine still surges on command. Third, there is a grim symmetry I will not flinch from. HeyMax spent 2025 and 2026 running its own devaluation sequence, transfer partners cut, redemption mechanics tightened, so the argument that single-issuer exposure is dangerous cuts at every issuer, HeyMax included. The difference is not virtue. It is that SIA's cuts are backed by an airline's balance sheet, and HeyMax's are backed by a Series A round. The two tripwires I would watch: Kris Plus re-raising earn rates in a sustained way, which would reclose the gap the devaluation opened, and less likely, but existential, Kris Plus widening beyond SIA's world into anything resembling multi-program flexibility. What does this mean for HeyMax? Do not fight Kris Plus for the KrisFlyer denominated in-store moment. That fight is unwinnable on trust and currency, and the incumbent can subsidize any rate war out of petty cash. Instead, harvest the margin the incumbent abandoned. The optimizers disappointed by 3.3, the merchants dropped from the program, the diners chope already routes, and compete on the axes Kris Plus structurally cannot occupy, which are flexibility across 20 partners, and an online affiliate breadth the airline has never built. Treat every Kris Plus subsidy wave as weather, not climate. The July 2025 restructuring revealed the machine's true long-run setting, which is whatever serves the airline, ratcheting downward, and internalize the uncomfortable lesson of the 40% cut that nobody left over. In loyalty, trust is the license to disappoint. Singapore Airlines has that license. HeyMax, at home, is still earning it, and the second half of this volume is about how narrow its margin for disappointment has already become. Chapter 6, ShopBack at Home. When Mileslife first sized up HeyMax in September of 2023, the benchmark it reached for was not Kris Plus, and it was not the banks. Aaron Wong warned that the newcomer carried, quote, considerable risk over an established option like ShopBack, unquote. That instinct still frames the field 3 years later, and it frames my core claim for this chapter. ShopBack's home turf is cash. Its balance sheet is patched rather than healed, and its business model stops exactly where HeyMax's begins, but its 45 million users and its 4.6-star app are a standing rebuke to HeyMax's 3.7-star operational reality. HeyMax does not need to beat ShopBack to win Singapore. It does need to survive the comparison, and on the evidence of the app stores, it currently does not. Start with what ShopBack actually is, because its scale is easy to underrate from inside the Miles bubble. Founded in Singapore in 2014 under the legal name E-commerce Enablers, it is 10 years HeyMax's senior, and the largest shopping rewards platform in Asia-Pacific. It runs online affiliate cashback across roughly 13 markets, an in-store QR payment product called ShopBack Pay, vouchers and gift cards, and card-linked offers. The company claims more than 45 million users and 20,000 partners across the group, and says it crossed 1 billion Singapore dollars in cumulative cashback paid out in January of 2026. Both of those figures are company-claimed, and neither is broken out for Singapore. No Singapore-only user number has ever been published. But even heavily discounted, this is the incumbent default for the exact behavior HeyMax monetizes. Route your purchase through my app and get something extra back. Now the balance sheet, because this is where skeptical hygiene earns its keep. ShopBack's audited accounts for the financial year ended March 2025, reviewed by Deal Street Asia, show a headline net profit of $208.4 million. That number is an artifact. It rests on $231.9 million of net finance, income from fair value adjustments on preference shares, an accounting gain that arrives, roughly speaking, because the claims investors hold against the company got marked down. Underneath it, revenue fell 2.8% to $129.4 million. The operating loss was $23.1 million. Operations consumed $9 million in cash, and total equity stood at negative $230.3 million. The honest reading is neither collapse nor health. The operating loss narrowed from $59.1 million the year before, cash burn narrowed from $33 million, and there is $208.6 million of cash in the tin. Patched, improving, not healed. The patching came through retrenchment, and the pattern of that retrenchment matters. Around a quarter of the staff were cut in March of 2024, taking employee costs from just over $90 million down to about $61.5 million. The Buy Now Pay Later business built on the Hula acquisition was shut down in Singapore and Malaysia that same month, and ShopBack Pay was discontinued in Malaysia in March of 2026, though it survives in Singapore. Management commentary claims revenue growth of more than 30% in the following financial year, with expansion into gaming and AI. That figure is unaudited, and I treat it cautiously. What the record shows is a company that has learned, expensively, to kill whatever does not pay, which is worth remembering when we ask, in a moment, whether it would ever launch something as hungry for balance sheet as a Miles program. Here is the structural point. ShopBack and HeyMax compete for the same click and for different customers. ShopBack's reward unit is cash, the most legible reward in existence and the least differentiated. In Singapore, its pitch ends with cash out to a bank account. That is precisely where HeyMax's pitch begins, a ledger currency that transfers one-to-one into 20 airline and hotel programs. Cash is face value by definition. A mile redeemed well is worth multiples of its face, which is the entire optimizer thesis. So for the cash-minded majority, ShopBack is and will remain the default, while HeyMax serves the minority for whom a transferable mile beats $1. The two models overlap completely on the behavior, the affiliate click, the merchant budgets, the in-store moment, and diverge completely on the product. That overlap is more punishing in Singapore than it would be anywhere else on HeyMax's map. In the Hong Kong volume, the ground problem was scarcity. Earning anything was hard, so any new earn was news. Singapore is the opposite. A decade of ShopBack, sitting on top of the world's most generous card-earn market, has taught consumers that the same click should always pay something extra. Extra value is a commodity here. To a mainstream Singaporean ear, HeyMax's basic pitch, stack a bonus on your spend, sounds like a smaller ShopBack with a stranger currency, so the differentiation has to carry the whole argument. And that is why the App Store gap matters more than any strategy slide. ShopBack Singapore holds 4.6 stars across more than 23,000 App Store ratings. HeyMax, checked in August of 2026, sits at 3.7 stars on both stores, roughly 10 ratings on the Apple Singapore storefront after a reset, and about 127 Google reviews against more than 50,000 installs. Behind HeyMax's number is a solicited burst of 5-star reviews over a single week in February of 2025, and a steady organic drumbeat of 1-star complaints with one dominant theme: customer support, meaning silences stretching past a month, and rejected fly-anywhere partial redemptions. The comparison is fair precisely because the click is the same click. Those 23,000 ratings are measuring what a decade of operational maturity buys, tracking that works, and a support desk that answers. For a currency whose entire premise is trust us to hold your value, 3.7 stars is not a vanity metric problem. It is a product problem wearing a review score. There is a human bridge between these two companies, and it is a short one. Aikfong NG, formerly a managing director at both ShopBack and Fave, served as HeyMax's pre-seed chief commercial officer. Fractionally, for about half a year, partly paid in Max Miles, by his own account, before leaving around October of 2024 to found Arasun Energy. The press styling of him as chief commercial officer at the July 2024 seed round overstated the arrangement. I note this because it means the one person who carried the cashback Incumbent's commercial playbook into HeyMax did so part-time and briefly, and no full-time commercial chief has been visible since. HeyMax knows what ShopBack knows only secondhand, and only for 6 months. Finally, the scenario every HeyMax investor should wargame. ShopBack bolts a Miles payout onto its 45 million users. The ingredients exist: the cash pile, the merchant network, and one chapter from now, Ascenda, the Singapore-based infrastructure firm that sells exactly the transfer rail such a product would need. I rate the move unlikely in the near term, and ShopBack's own accounts supply the reasons. Its last 5 years are a story of shedding liability-heavy products. A Miles ledger is exactly the kind of liability its new discipline forbids. And the economics of independently paying out Miles, Mileslife's death, and HeyMax's own cash for Miles Rail dying at 3.5-cent fulfillment against 2-cent economics are openly hostile. But note that the cheap version is not a business unit. It is a toggle. Convert your cash back into Miles through a partner rail could be shipped as a feature, tested on a cohort, and killed quietly if it failed. If ShopBack ever ships that toggle competently, HeyMax's differentiation compresses overnight to transfer breadth, community, and trust. So what does this mean for HeyMax? ShopBack defines both the ceiling of the behavior and the floor of the operations. The ceiling: the mainstream will default to cash, and no amount of Miles evangelism changes that, so HeyMax's addressable market in Singapore is the optimizer segment, plus whoever it can convert at the margin, not ShopBack's 45 million. The floor, 4.6 stars, is what routine reliability looks like at scale, and a wallet app that holds redeemable value will be judged against that floor, not excused from it. The strategic instruction is therefore unglamorous. Do not try to out ShopBack on merchant count or cashback rates. The currency is the moat. Fix the plumbing, support latency, tracking reliability, redemption predictability, until the review pages stop handing the incumbent free ammunition. And watch one thing with real vigilance. Not ShopBack's cashback business, which is a different sport, but any experiment that pays its users in someone else's miles. The day that toggle appears, the clock on HeyMax's uniqueness starts running. Chapter 7: The Superapp and Coin Economies. My core claim in this chapter is structural. Grab, Shopee, and Lazada own Singapore's daily transactional behavior: the rides, the meals, the parcels, and all three have retreated from aspirational rewards into cheap, expiring, closed-loop coins. The retreat was deliberate, and it happened almost simultaneously. It leaves the aspirational lane, daily spend compounding into something you actually dream about, structurally open in Singapore. But before HeyMax celebrates, it should sit with the uncomfortable question underneath. Why did companies with vastly deeper pockets choose to vacate the lane HeyMax is spending venture capital to occupy? Grab first, because Grab is the gravity well. The Superapp reported 54 million monthly transacting users across the group in the second quarter of 2026, up 17% year-on-year, with first-half revenue of $1.95 billion and 355 million in profit. Those are figures I could verify against Grab's own earnings release, and they follow its first profitable year in 2025. Singapore is its headquarters and, on my estimate, its highest revenue per user market, though Grab publishes no Singapore split. This is no longer a subsidy machine chasing growth. It is a profitable company that now manages every cost line like one, including loyalty. Which brings us to what happened in November of 2025. Grab Rewards, the Superapp's points program, was rebranded Grab Coins, and from January of 2026, the whole structure was flattened. Membership tiers were stripped out. The Grab Unlimited subscription no longer conferred rewards multipliers, and old points were converted one-to-one into the new coin. The mechanics, covered at the time by Mothership and by Grab's own materials, tell the story plainly. 50 Grab coins knock about 10 cents off your next order, an implied value of roughly 1/5 of a cent per coin, and the coins now expire after 6 months, where Grab Rewards points previously did not expire at all. Years ago, Grab Rewards points could even transfer to KrisFlyer. That option disappeared around 2021 or 2022 by most accounts, a date I could not pin down and do not lean on. The direction of travel, though, is unambiguous. Do the arithmetic against the Miles world, and the retreat becomes vivid. Milelion's canonical valuation band puts a mile at 1.5 cents on the buy side and 1.7 cents on the redeem side. A Grab coin is worth roughly an eighth of a mile at the bottom of that band, and it dies in 6 months. That is not a loyalty program in any aspirational sense. It is a discount ledger with a countdown timer. My read is that a newly profitable Grab looked at its rewards liability and rationalized it, then dressed the retreat up as simplification. Fair enough, as capital allocation. But it is a formal exit from the business of making everyday spending add up to anything. The e-commerce coins are built on the same logic taken further. Shopee coins convert at 100 coins to the Singapore dollar at checkout, and they are earned not just from purchases but from daily check-ins, games and product ratings, engagement machinery, not value storage. They expire at the end of the 3rd month after they are earned, and the expiry is not a bug. Breakage is the business model. Shopee is Singapore's largest e-commerce property, so the absolute volume of coins out there is enormous, my estimate, since Shopee publishes no float figures. Lazada's coins are worth a cent each, and the platform has drifted toward vouchers and bonus stacking instead. Neither currency ever leaves its platform, and neither is meant to. Notice, though, the strange dual relationship here. Shopee and Lazada were HeyMax's most searched merchants in its own year-end recap for 2023, alongside Amazon, with early portal rates around 0.7 miles per dollar and 1 mile per dollar respectively. So the coin economies compete with HeyMax for checkout routing. A well-stacked Shopee voucher can beat a 1 mile per dollar portal bonus on pure price, while the very same platforms feed HeyMax's earned surface through affiliate commissions. They are not partners exactly, and not rivals exactly. They are the landlords of the traffic that HeyMax farms. And then there is the corpse in this landscape, which deserves more attention than it gets. The marketplace Q10, spelled QO10, was once a top 3 Singapore marketplace, and the owner of Korea's Tmon and WeMakePrice. The Korean payment default crisis of 2024 pulled the group under. And on the 11th of November, 2024, the Singapore High Court ordered the Singapore company wound up, with creditors filing more than $198 million in claims. Court reporting noted that only about 34,000 Singapore dollars had been recovered by the time of the first creditors' meeting. Q10's coins and points died with it, instantly and completely. That is the closed-loop parable in one sentence. A coin balance is an unsecured claim on its issuer's solvency, junior to every real creditor, and when the issuer goes, it goes. HeyMax can and does benefit from that parable, but honesty requires saying that it cuts both ways. Max Miles are also a claim on a venture-funded startup, and Singapore's optimizer community already prices this. The risk vocabulary in Milesife's comment sections escalated through 2026, from tracking complaints to explicit counterparty risk language. The difference, and it is a real one, is the exit door. Max Miles transfer one-to-one into 20 external airline and hotel programs, so value can leave the building. A Shopee coin never could. But an exit door is only as good as its width and its warning time, and the June 2026 cull of 17 transfer partners showed that both can narrow abruptly. The Q10 lesson disciplines HeyMax exactly as much as it flatters it. Why is the aspirational lane open, then? Because aspiration is expensive, and everyone with a daily frequency franchise has decided it is a cost to be managed down. Grab could have funded flights and chose fifth of a cent discounts. Shopee's 3-month expiry manufactures breakage on purpose. The bank spent 2024 through 2026 swinging what Mileslife calls the Nerf hammer at their 4 miles per dollar caps. Even Kris Plus, the Incumbent airline's own lifestyle app, covered in the previous chapter, cut its average earn by roughly 40% in July of 2025. In the Hong Kong volume, the ground problem was that earning anything was hard. In Singapore, the Superapps have made earning easy and almost worthless. A different failure and the same vacuum. The demand side of that vacuum is real and quantifiable. Recall the figure I leaned on in Chapter 1. The top 20% of KrisFlyer members earned just 27,852 miles in 2025, A total and engaged optimizer beats on card spend alone. Millions of people are accumulating slowly toward redemptions they will rarely reach, on rails that keep getting worse. The coin economies walked away from exactly these customers, the ones who want their daily rides, groceries, and parcels to compound into a business-class seat rather than dissolve into 10-cent vouchers. The vacancy is not an absence of demand. It is demand waiting for a supplier that can stay solvent while serving it. So what does this mean for HeyMax? The opening is genuine, and it is the whole company. HeyMax is the only player in Singapore whose entire product is aspiration layered on top of daily behavior, and the giants have now formally exited that position rather than merely neglecting it. The play follows: be the aspirational layer on top of the coin economies rather than their opponent. HeyMax already earns on the Shopee and Lazada click, and every GrabCoin's devaluation makes a transferable mile look better by contrast. But the warning is written into the same facts. The lane is vacant because it eats cash, and Grab's retreat was a solvency-respecting choice by a company that could afford either path. If HeyMax's own tightening arc, the Accor devaluation to 342, the culled partner list, fees appearing at the exits, pushes Max Miles toward coin-like value, then the differentiation dies from the inside, and the vacancy swallows its occupant. That gives me a clean falsifier to carry through this volume. Track the effective redemption value of a Max Mile. The day it drifts toward the coin line, the structural opening this chapter describes has closed, not because a Superapp came back for the lane, but because HeyMax left it too. Chapter 8. Banks B2B and the Ghost of Mileslife. 3 facts define the deep structure of Singapore's rewards field, and together they are my core claim. The banks keep their rewards captive and will not outsource them. Ascenda, sitting quietly in the same city, can arm any one of those banks with a HeyMax equivalent product almost overnight, and Mileslife's corpse marks the road HeyMax is driving down. The Singapore field contains no clone of HeyMax, and the emptiness is not an oversight. It is information. This chapter is about reading it. Begin with the banks, because they are the upstream mint of nearly every mile in Singapore. Card points flowing outward to airline programs are the incumbent version of HeyMax's entire product, and they keep the whole loop in-house. DBS runs mass-market cashback theater through PayLaw, including a $10 million campaign across hawker centers, heartland shops, and supermarkets, running from August to December of 2026. Pure behavior capture at the payment layer, with no external platform involved. UOB fields Rewards Plus, which it calls Singapore's biggest rewards, deals, and cashback program, its own claim, alongside the UOB dollar card-linked cashback network at more than 100 merchants. OCBC went the other direction and consolidated its 3 points currencies exclusively into its own app from November of 2025. Different styles, one posture. The loyalty relationship belongs to the bank, full stop. The transfer hubs show the same captivity from the flexibility side. HSBC offers 16 airline and 4 hotel partners, CD around 10 airlines, DBS and UOB just 2 or 3 each. That is the incumbent flexible miles product, steadily degraded on the earn side by banks, as Mile Lion put it, quote, wielding the Nerf hammer indiscriminately, unquote, through 2024 and 2025, but unmatched in scale. The Nerf wave actually helps HeyMax at the margin. As bank earn compresses, an incremental layer stacked on card, spend becomes relatively more valuable. But note what no Singapore bank does. None transfers points into Max Miles. None outsources its rewards engine to a third party. Where banks touch HeyMax at all, it is as a distribution channel, application bounties, with an HSBC funnel paying up to 25,000 Max Miles, a DBS card at 26,000 per Mile Lion's coverage in June of 2026, and a UOB offer through SingSaver reaching 55,000 at Chinese New Year. Bounties are real revenue. They are not partnership. That bounty channel deserves a paragraph of its own, because it is a business with its own weather. SingSaver and Seedly sit under the Nasdaq-listed Money Hero Group, which restructured through 2024 and 2025 to reach profitability on an adjusted basis, and which reports 3.9 million monthly unique visitors, company figures, while shutting the Seedly app at the end of 2025. MoneySmart competes on aggressive acquisition bounties. Dyson Appliances, Apple Hardware, cash approaching $450 per approved card. HeyMax plays in exactly this channel with one clever twist. It pays the bounty in its own miles, which means the marketing expense is denominated in its own liability while the bank's fee arrives in cash. Smart economics. But it is a commodity channel where the bank holds the budget and the whip, and where two established comparison giants fight for the same payouts. It funds the business, it defends nothing. Now the quiet giant. Ascenda, Singapore-based, formerly Caligo, is not a consumer competitor at all, which is precisely why I rank it the biggest structural threat in this volume. It runs TransferConnect, the hub infrastructure banks already use for points-to-miles conversions worldwide, plus white-label earn-and-burn products like the Caligo hotel booking engine. It added Hilton Honors to the hub in September of 2025. And in April of 2026, Ascenda demonstrated the threat in the most pointed way possible. It handed DBS Hong Kong a flexible points transfer product, DBS dollars flowing into frequent traveler currencies, in HeyMax's newest market, months after the Cathay launch that the Hong Kong volume chronicled. Read that plainly. The transfer rail, the thing that makes Max Miles feel magical, is not a moat. It is a product category, and Ascenda sells it to anyone with a banking license and a budget. The implication is uncomfortable, but clarifying. If any Singapore bank ever decides its customers deserve a HeyMax-like experience, it will not need to build one, and it will not need to buy HeyMax. It can simply procure the parts. So HeyMax's defensibility cannot live on the supply side, the rails, the partner list, the conversion tech. It has to live on the demand side, the aggregated earned surface across shopping, dining, cards, and transit, the single consumer ledger, the community that treats Max Miles as a currency worth discussing, the brand that makes a mile feel like it is going somewhere. Rails can be bought. Habits and trust have to be earned, which is convenient, because they are also the things HeyMax's operational record currently puts most at risk. Around the edges of the field sit the adjacents, none of them clones. CardUp, underfunding societies since 2022, lets users pay rent, taxes, and invoices by card to manufacturer spend, complementary and competitive at once, since the spend it manufactures is exactly what HeyMax's Card Maximizer tracks, but it owns its own user relationship. Atom, the profitable buy now pay later leader, with $470 million in claimed revenue for 2025, keeps its rewards voucher-shaped. Its Atom Plus points bridge into Max Miles, a genuine currency link opened in 2025, was devalued by May of 2026. Fave survives under Pine Labs, diminished from its peak in 2019, selling dining deals with cash-denominated rewards. Each occupies a niche beside HeyMax's model. None attempts the model itself. Which brings us to the ghost. Mileslife launched in Singapore in June of 2017 with an idea that should sound very familiar. A lifestyle app paying real airline miles directly for dining and everyday spending, an independent currency layer with no bank and no airline behind it. It wound down across 2018 and 2019, holding user value on the way out, partners unpaid. The Singapore entity eventually struck off. The physics that killed it are simple. It bought miles from airlines at retail rates and funded the payout from thin merchant margins, burning cash on every enthusiastic user. And here is the uncomfortable part. HeyMax has already met the same physics. Its cash for miles rail died on the 1st of June, 2026, because fulfilling American A Advantage transfers cost up to 3.5 cents per mile against roughly 2-cent economics. Quote, unsustainable, unquote, in the company's own word, as reported by Mileslife. The optimizer community does not need the parallel explained. Mileslife's name appears, unprompted, in Mileslife's comment threads through 2026 as the precedent for counterparty risk. Even Kris Plus, the Incumbent's lifestyle earn app, is best understood as Mileslife's idea rebuilt on the one balance sheet that can afford it, the airline's own. So why does no Singapore clone of HeyMax exist in the most rewards-literate market on Earth? Because everything that ever tried the independent aspirational currency model here has devalued or died. Mileslife is dead. In Starm's Amaze card, the card-stacking darling of 2022 was gutted by March of 2025, though it technically survives. Kris Plus self-devalued in July of 2025, and Q10's closed loop died with its issuer. The field is empty not because nobody noticed the opportunity, but because the market has priced the difficulty of the opportunity, and the price is capital, patience, and a tolerance for holding a liability that compounds with your own success. HeyMax is alone in the field because being alone is the hard part. What does this mean for HeyMax? 3 things in ascending order of importance. First, stop expecting the big banks to become issuance partners on any near horizon. Their posture is captivity, their interest in HeyMax is bounty distribution, and the network will have to be built from challengers and number twos, the argument the partner chapters of this volume will take up. Second, treat Ascenda as the permanent background threat it is. Every quarter of mediocre app ratings and unanswered support tickets is a quarter in which a bank could buy the rails and out-execute the experience, so the moat must be poured on the demand side, deliberately, now. Third, and most important, learn the right lesson from the ghost. Mileslife died of generosity it could not fund. HeyMax's tightening arc, the subject of Chapter 11, is, in this light, the toll of staying alive, and paying it is not optional. But every toll payment made by surprise spends trust, and trust is the single resource that separates HeyMax's ending from Mileslife's. The field is empty. Whether that emptiness reads as opportunity or as warning depends entirely on which side of the unit economics HeyMax ends up standing. Chapter 9. The HeyMax story from the inside of its home market. My core claim in this chapter is a double one, and both halves matter equally. A laid-off meta-engineering team has built the most product-shaped loyalty startup Singapore has ever seen, shipping at a tempo no incumbent or rival matches. And its traction claims deserve both respect and an asterisk, because not one user, revenue, or miles figure has ever been independently verified, and the app stores tell a humbler story than the press releases. The Hong Kong volume told the HeyMax story from the outside in, an acquirer arriving in a new market with a playbook. This chapter tells it from the inside, from the home market where the playbook was written. The origin is a layoff. Joe Liu, Shanghai-born, then the University of Michigan, then Expedia in Seattle, then engineering leadership at Meta in San Francisco and finally Singapore, was cut in Meta's November 2022 layoffs, and he openly calls that layoff the, quote, black swan, unquote, that assembled the founding team. The persona he built on top of it is deliberate. The self-styled chief Max Miles hoarder, claiming more than 100 credit cards and 15 million personal miles, company-claimed color, unverifiable, but a genuine signal of founder market fit, sharpened on the podcast circuit from Brave to January Capital's Show to Money FM. The co-founders, all formerly of Meta according to January Capital's own diligence write-up, are Sean Dai, the chief operating officer and roughly 10 years a data engineer at Meta; Qi Wang, a senior engineer by way of Quantcast, Indeed, and Meta, with a doctorate in reinforcement learning from NUS; and Jialu Zhang on product, formerly of Uber and Instagram. Notice what the roster lacks. There is no career loyalty industry executive among the four. That absence explains most of what follows, the extraordinary product velocity, and the commercial and operational gaps that a later chapter will tally. Because the striking thing about HeyMax's first year is that it was not a loyalty company at all. The April 2023 product was a credit card optimizer built on merchant category code lookup. Find the best card for this merchant. Reddit normalized it as a free utility in that form, months before there was a currency, and therefore before there was anything to distrust, which shaped Singapore's casual perception of the company permanently. June 2023 brought the famous abandoned concept. the Max card, one card to rule them all, auto-routing every transaction to your highest-earning card. It never shipped, but filed the ambition away, because it resurfaced a year later in more buildable form as Card Maximizer on Visa's rails. Then came the currency, and with it the cadence that defines the company. Max Miles launched on the 8th of September, 2023, with roughly 50 merchants and more than 10 transfer partners, one-to-one, no fees, miles that never expire. Vouchers followed within a month. By November, there were 9 new transfer partners and a 10-fold cut in the transfer minimum, and Australia quietly launched the same month. May 2024 brought the Visa offers platform integration for Singapore and Brunei, the deal that turned the dead Max card concept into Card Maximizer and enabled the MRT and bus campaigns paying 3 to 6 miles per dollar. June 2024 brought Fly Anywhere, the redeem against any flight rail, at 1.8 cents per mile, later too. January 2025, 75 miles per Chope restaurant booking. February 2025, the Chocolate Finance debit card, the first Visa debit card in Singapore paying miles. Then Travel eSIMs, a Chrome extension, sales of miles, and in June 2026, the Award Companion Award Seat Finder, a tool consequential enough that Singapore Airlines' crackdown on award search in July 2026 was reportedly triggered partly by it. Stack that against the incumbents and the contrast is almost comic. Kris plus ships devaluations, HeyMax ship surface area. The record also contains something rarer than velocity, documented candor. The company's own first birthday post admitted confirmation waits of 1 to 3 months, admitted missing miles incidents, and named the absence of KrisFlyer a, quote, notable gap, unquote. It published a priority ordering, Maxers and employees first, then partners, then shareholders. And the pattern held under fire. Joe Liu replies to critics by name in Milesife's comment sections at every flashpoint, and the June 2026 revisions to HeyMax first directly answered objections raised in April's comments. My considered read, which this volume will keep returning to, is that the community's worry about HeyMax is counterparty risk, not character. The money and the milestones frame the arc. A seed round of $2.6 million in July 2024, led by January Capital with Tenity and XA Network, with angels including She & Co. and JJ Chai. And note the small hygiene flag that even the company's own later press recycled a 2.7 figure that its original announcement contradicts. A Series A of $11 million on the 28th of January, 2026, led by Peak 15 through Rohit Agarwal, with Betatron and Angels Rob Rosenstein, the Agoda chairman, and David Lee, formerly Visa's Asia-Pacific president. Then the flag planting. A Singapore headquarters inaugurated on the 31st of March, 2026, with Alvin Tan, Minister of State, and a board member of the Monetary Authority of Singapore, as guest of honor, the team having grown from about 10 people to about 30 in a year. Liu's line that day, calling Singapore, quote, the absolute center of both the future of finance and the future of travel, unquote, is the company's home market thesis in one sentence. Now the traction ladder, every rung of it company claimed. 10,000 users and 15 million miles at 2 months old in November 2023. 25,000 users and 23 million miles by year-end. 50,000 and 50 million at the seed. Then the May 2025 disclosure burst. 120,000 registered users, 44,500 monthly actives, $6 million in annualized revenue run rate, and 200 million in total transaction volume, and more than 150,000 users at the Series A. Taken at face value, the shape is credible. The ratio of monthly actives to registered users implied by the May 2025 figures is around 37%, respectable for a utility app, and the trajectory is consistent. But face value is exactly what an analyst is not paid to accept, so here is the asterisk, in full. The phrase 100,000 plus app users appears in press materials from August 2024, August 2025, and March 2026, 19 months, 3 releases, the same number. And the March 2026 headquarters announcement used that 100,000 figure 2 months after the Series A claimed 150,000, an inconsistency the company has never explained. Installs versus registrations, presumably, but presumably is doing the work. The May 2025 claim of growth achieved with, quote, no marketing or advertising spend, unquote, sits awkwardly beside referral bonuses and application bounties paid in miles, which is marketing spend denominated in the company's own liability. The stated target of 1 million users by the end of 2026 is a 6.7-fold ask in 11 months from the last claimed number. Aspirational, to be polite. And beneath all of it, the structural point, nothing is audited and no third party has ever verified any of these figures. The most honest external instrument we have is the app stores, and they are blunt. As of August 2026, HeyMax holds 3.7 stars on both stores, roughly 10 ratings on the Apple Singapore storefront after a reset, and about 127 Google reviews against more than 50,000 installs. ShopBack, for scale, 4.6 stars across 23,000 ratings. HeyMax's history includes a solicited 5-star burst in 1 week of February 2025 and an organic 1-star drumbeat with a single dominant theme, customer support, meaning silences of a month or more, and rejected fly-anywhere partial redemptions. For a claimed base of 150,000 users, this is a strikingly thin footprint. The reading I find most consistent with all the evidence. HeyMax is a genuinely loved power user product with a niche several times smaller than its press suggests, wrapped in growth numbers that are directional at best. The map is also wider than the team. Australia launched quietly in November 2023 and has never reported a traction figure. Hong Kong came via the KRIP acquisition in July 2025, and the Cathay launched that November, the Hong Kong volume's whole subject. Japan and Taiwan were promised by the end of 2026. As of August 2026, neither exists. 30 people carry a 4-market map. So what does this mean for HeyMax? The company's core asset is real and rare. Engineering tempo plus founder credibility, a combination no Singapore loyalty player has ever fielded. Its core deficit is equally clear: operational trust and a widening gap between claimed scale and verifiable evidence. In most industries, that gap is a public relations nitpick. In this one, it is strategic because HeyMax's product is a promise: hold your value with us, and we will make it fly. And a company whose numbers cannot be checked is asking for faith in precisely the dimension where its currency demands proof. The respect is earned. The asterisk is earned too. The next milestone that would genuinely move my assessment is not a bigger claimed number. It is a verified one. Chapter 10, the Singapore Partner Record. Here is my core claim, and it is the hinge between this volume and the last one. HeyMax's home market partner web is fintech-flavored and anchorless. A chocolate finance card, a U-bridge, an Atom bridge, an HSBC application funnel, Visa rails, and the Hong Kong issuance network that the previous volume dissected was this Singapore playbook, exported and upgraded. The prototype was built at home, the production model shipped abroad. The strategic consequence writes itself. The home market now needs the reimport. To see why, judge the currency the way I judge any currency, by who issues it, who accepts it, and where the exits are. Start with the earn base, because it is the least interesting layer and should be dispatched quickly. The affiliate merchant count ran from 50 plus at the September 2023 launch, to 500 plus at the seed, to 800 plus by the Series A, company claimed at every step, never audited. The logos are the right ones. Shopee, Lazada, Amazon Singapore, Trip.com, Agoda, Klook, NTUC FairPrice, Foodpanda, Starbucks, even JR East's Japan Rail Cafe at up to 9 miles per dollar. But this is the commodity layer, and ShopBack has more of everything here and always will. What distinguishes a currency is not where you can earn it. It is who else pays wages in it. So turn to the issuance layer, third parties putting max miles into circulation, and begin with Visa, which is the anchor rail without being an anchor partner. The Visa offers platform integration of May 2024, covering Singapore and Brunei, with Visa's country manager Adeline Kim on the record, powers two things. One is Card Maximizer, the automatic rewards tracker across 10 Singapore Visa cards. The other is the transit campaigns, 3 to 6 miles per dollar on MRT and bus rides through 2024 and 2025, including a 2 million mile giveaway pool and the SG60 referral tiers. Now the nuance that matters more than the headline: there is no deal with SimplyGo or EZ-Link. The transit earn rides entirely on Visa's merchant category detection, with HeyMax funding the miles itself. Singapore's transit operator has never touched HeyMax. Remember that, because when the Hong Kong volume described the Visa commute campaign there, it was describing this Singapore rail, exported. The closest thing Singapore has produced to a true issuance anchor is Chocolate Finance, and the saga is the partner record in miniature. In February 2025, Chocolate's Visa debit card launched as the first debit card in Singapore to pay miles, the only card anywhere natively issuing max miles, at 2 miles per dollar on the first $1,000 each month. Within a month, Chocolate suffered its $500 million redemption run. The community verdict on HeyMax was, remarkably, full absolution. The mega thread about the run on the main Singapore subreddit, 634 points strong, contains 0 mentions of HeyMax. The company was the rewards rail, not the deposit taker, and Singapore understood the difference. 4 months after launch, the earn was halved to 1 mile per dollar, the nerf that crystallized pseudo-smiles, quote, pump and dump, unquote, verdict on HeyMax's promotional style, and yet the partnership then deepened rather than died. Chocolate now sells max miles at 1.6 cents apiece. It ran the 10 million mile Chocolate Games promotion, of which more than 7 million miles were unlocked, according to fintech press coverage, and it relaunched with a full Mile Lion review in July 2026. One line summarizes it. Singapore's nearest issuance anchor blew up within a month of signing and survived defanged. The second strategic artifact is U, spelled Y-U-U, and it may matter more. U is DFI Retail's coalition program. Cold Storage, Giant, Guardian, 7-Eleven live in Singapore since 2020, with 1.8 million members. The bridge opened in 2 directions. Max miles could flow into U points from May 2025, which quietly created the only KrisFlyer backdoor. At roughly 0.83 KrisFlyer miles per max mile, briefly improved to an effective 1-to-1 on 2 max miles day events that year. And U points could flow back into max miles from June 2026, instantly at 3.6-to-1, capped monthly. That reverse direction has a consequence Mile Lion spotted immediately. The DBSU card, earning the equivalent of 10 miles per dollar in U points at those grocers, becomes what Aaron Wong calls, quote, a dedicated max miles earner, unquote. Sit with that. A Big 3 bank card now effectively mints HeyMax's currency, not through any bank partnership, but through a side door held open by a supermarket coalition. It is the most institutional issuance Singapore has, and HeyMax did not sign a bank to get it. The rest of the web fills out the fintech flavor. Atom's points bridged into max miles from 2025, a genuine third-party currency link, and were devalued by May 2026. Tenity, HeyMax's own seed investor, became the first corporate benefits client in February 2025, paying staff perks in max miles. No second named corporate client has followed, so it remains a template rather than a channel. HSBC's card application funnel pays up to 25,000 bonus max miles, distribution economics, not issuance. Rently converts rent payments into miles from 0.67 cents, which is less a partnership than HeyMax selling its currency wholesale. And in the same week I write this, Plaza Premium's Smart Traveler program joined, dated the 4th of August, 2026. Every one of these is real. Not one of them is an anchor. Now the exits, the transfer spine that makes the currency a currency. The partner count ran from 10 plus at launch to 27 by late 2024 to roughly 30 at the peak, and 20 as of August 2026. After the June 2026 cull removed 17 programs in one stroke. What remains is one-to-one and fee-free, and the additions tell their own story about where the company's head was. Asia Miles arrived on the 3rd of November, 2025, 2 days before the Hong Kong launch. The Singapore rail laid deliberately for the Hong Kong story, followed by Vietnam Airlines that same month, Flying Blue directly in March 2026, and Japan Airlines in July. Meanwhile, the 2026 cadence of paid transfer bonuses, from Shangri-La to Accor to Asia Miles, shows a currency increasingly sold, not merely earned. And then there is the hole in the middle of the web, the fact this whole volume keeps orbiting. There is no KrisFlyer. Mileslife stated it flatly on the 4th of August, 2026. Quote, "Max miles cannot be converted into KrisFlyer miles," unquote, leaving only that unfavorable U-path at 0.83. The company itself called KrisFlyer a notable gap in its first birthday post. 3 years on, it is not a gap. It is the load-bearing absence of the entire Singapore proposition. In KrisFlyer's kingdom, the local alternative currency does not buy the king's coin. The one airline gesture, pointing the other way, remains Qatar's transfer bonus promotion of October 2024, which listed HeyMax alongside CD and HSBC as an eligible source, an airline treating a startup like a bank program, and, tellingly, the only HeyMax mention in Mainly Miles' entire archive. Set this web beside Hong Kong's, and the export upgrade pattern becomes unmistakable. Hong Kong launched in November 2025 with what Singapore has never had: an institutional issuance network designed before day one, an octopus-scale anchor with genuine population reach, a comparison site issuance deal, embedded visa issuance, all assembled around the card-linked infrastructure and relationships that came with the KRIP acquisition. Every component has a Singapore ancestor. The Visa Commute campaign came from the Singapore Transit Rail, the fintech bridges from the Chocolate and Atom deals, the card-linked layer from Card Maximizer. But the Singapore versions accreted opportunistically between 2023 and 2025, signed by a team of 10 as chances arose, while the Hong Kong network was designed in one campaign, with hindsight, by a company that had already run the experiments at home. Singapore was the laboratory. Hong Kong got the factory. Why does the anchor-less structure matter? Because of what Singapore's partner roster has in common, nearly every issuer in it is a challenger or a fintech carrying its own fragility. Chocolate ran within a month. Atom devalued its bridge. Tenity is a template. The web's redundancy means no single failure can kill it. The Chocolate saga proved that, but its shallowness means no single success compounds into mass distribution, either. An anchor partner is different in kind. It makes earning the currency a default for a population, rather than an opt-in for a niche. Hong Kong's octopus relationship is that. Nothing in Singapore is. So what does this mean for HeyMax? The home market needs the reimport, and the company now knows, because it did it in Hong Kong, exactly what the finished article looks like. One institutional anchor with population-scale reach, a designed issuance network around it, and the fintech bridges relegated to their proper role as texture rather than structure. The candidates and their rankings are the business of this volume's partner chapters, the Trust and NTUC Link wedge, the Simply Go analog to Octopus, but the strategic point belongs here. The Singapore record proves HeyMax can invent the instruments. The Hong Kong record proves it can orchestrate them. The open question is whether any Singapore institution will sell what Hong Kong's did, in a market where KrisFlyer's gravity bends every boardroom conversation. The next entry in the Singapore partner record should not be another bridge. It should be an anchor, and if, a year from now, the record still shows bridges only, that will itself be the answer about how far the home market will let this company go. Chapter 11, The Tightening Arc. The cuts of 2025 and 2026 are HeyMax's unit economics telling on themselves in public. That is my core claim in this chapter, and I want to be precise about what it does and does not mean. It does not mean the company is failing. A startup that discovers its generosity is unaffordable and trims it is doing exactly what a disciplined operator should do. What it does mean is that anyone who wants to know what max miles actually cost to honor no longer has to guess, because every retrenchment since April of 2025 has drawn the cost curve in the open. The question the arc leaves us with, and the question this chapter tries to answer, is whether HeyMax is right-sizing generosity it never should have offered, or eating the moat that generosity built. Start with the high water mark, because the arc only makes sense when you set it against the peak. In November of 2023, 2 months after Max Miles launched, HeyMax cut its transfer minimum tenfold, from 10,000 miles down to just 1,000, telling users in its own announcement that a lower threshold for mile transfers was important to them. The pitch of that era was maximalist: one-to-one transfers, no fees, miles that never expire, and a partner list climbing from 10 toward 30. Everything that followed is best read as that promise meeting an invoice. The first tremors were small and easy to miss. In March of 2025, the company adjusted its account policy. Rounding on each transaction tightened to 1 decimal place, and accounts inactive for 12 months would be permanently deleted, with warnings beforehand. Trivial changes on their own, but the company's framing was not trivial. It cited fairness and, in its own words, sustaining the program. That is the first time the word sustaining enters HeyMax's own vocabulary about itself, and in retrospect, it reads like a disclosure. Then came the pivot point. On the 7th of April, 2025, in what Mileslife covered as a major overhaul of Max Miles redemptions, HeyMax re-raised the transfer minimum to 10,000, the exact threshold it had cut with such fanfare 17 months earlier. It suspended instant transfers and pushed redemptions onto a manual cash for miles mechanic. You requested a transfer, waited up to 5 business days for a virtual Visa card, and then bought the partner miles yourself at HeyMax's expense. Joe Liu framed the whole thing as temporary and stressed that the 1-to-1 ratio would be maintained. Aaron Wang's assessment was that the friction killed time-sensitive plays, but that preserving 1-to-1 was what actually mattered. The comment section, meanwhile, did the arithmetic the company would not. One reader noted that HeyMax was now issuing $65 of gift card to fulfill 2,000 avios, and concluded, quote, "They want survive at this level of cost," unquote. That commenter, it turns out, was not wrong about the cost, only about what HeyMax would do about it. For a year afterward, the story looked like recovery. Direct transfers trickled back. Qatar in July of 2025, Accor in October. Asia Miles on the 3rd of November, 2025, just 2 days before the Hong Kong launch, a reminder that the Singapore rail was being laid partly for the Hong Kong story. Then Flying Blue in March of 2026, and Japan Airlines in July. The restorations gave HeyMax a delivery narrative to set against the overhaul, and the community largely bought it. Then the arc resumed, and it resumed harder. In May of 2026, HeyMax announced that cash for miles would end on the 1st of June, and with it 17 transfer partners. 14 airlines and 3 hotel groups, including American A Advantage, British Airways, Qantas, United, Emirates, Turkish, Hilton, Marriott, and Hyatt. The company's stated rationale was candid to the point of self-incrimination. The mechanic was unsustainable, because fulfilling some partners cost up to 3.5 cents per mile, with A Advantage as the named example against economics of roughly 2 cents. Sit with that for a moment. For as long as the arbitrage ran, HeyMax was paying 3.5 cents to honor a mile it valued at 2. That is not a loyalty program. That is philanthropy with a waitlist. The cull took the partner count from roughly 30 at the Series A down to 20, and it fell heaviest on exactly the programs that had made the breadth pitch credible. British Airways and Turkish were HeyMax's top redemption partners in its own year-end wrap for 2023. 3 years later, both were gone. And the 10,000 minimum quietly strands the small saver. One Mileslife reader, posting as Ricky, complained of 6,000 miles he could not move at all, in an app he found cluttered and, in his words, annoyingly stupid. 3 weeks later came the cut I consider the most consequential of the whole arc, even though it was the smallest. On the 22nd of June, 2026, Accor transfers were devalued from 1-to-1 down to 3-to-2, with about 8 days of notice. Every previous retrenchment had preserved the 1-to-1 ratio as the program's constitutional principle. Joe Liu had defended it by name in April of 2025. Accor was the first breach of the principle itself. Aaron Wang's response, quote, "As disappointing as this is, I can't say I'm surprised," unquote, is worth reading twice, because resignation from the program's most important chronicler means the expectation of devaluation is now priced in. The arc has a second face, and it is not a cut but a sale. Across the same 18 months, HeyMax increasingly sold its currency rather than giving it away. Miles through rent payments from about 2/3 of a cent, Max Miles Boost at 2 cents, Chocolate Finance at 1.6, plus a rolling calendar of paid transfer bonuses. And then the capstone. HeyMax First, announced and waitlisted in April of 2026. Paid tiers running from 99 Singapore dollars for 30,000 miles up to 1,999 Singapore dollars for 1 million, with draw fees of 2.3 to 3 cents per mile, reclaimable as members re-earn. It was revised in June under community pressure to add a free tier and indefinite reclaim, and it fully launched in July. I treat First as part of the tightening arc because it is the same disclosure in a different register. A company that once subsidized redemptions at 3.5 cents now charges an access fee to advance them. Philip Schelper of Loyalty and Reward Co. called First an experiment worth watching closely. And in the same review, in July of 2026, he flagged the debt overhang of member money parked at a venture-funded startup and the likelihood of regulatory scrutiny if fly now earn later models scale. When the sympathetic professional analysis of your flagship product includes the word regulator, the arc has changed what kind of company you are perceived to be. So, right-sizing or moat-eating? The honest answer is that the evidence supports both readings, and which one wins depends on execution details HeyMax still controls. The right-sizing case is strong. The generosity that got cut was mostly arbitrage the company was funding out of venture capital, and nobody's moat is built on buying A-Advantage miles at a 75% loss. The load-bearing promises survived. Miles still never expire, and the 20 remaining partners still transfer at 1-to-1 without fees. The free utility layer kept deepening even in the cutting months, with card maximizer features and the award companion tool shipping alongside the calls. In the Hong Kong volume, I argued that HeyMax's real product is optionality, and 20 solid 1-to-1 partners is still more optionality than any Singapore bank offers, while every KrisFlyer adjacent rail in the market devalued over the same period. But the moat-eating case is not weaker, it is only slower. The moat was never any single partner. It was the belief that Max Miles were a store of value you could hold without watching. Each event in the arc taxed that belief. The overhaul taxed patience. The cull taxed breadth. Accor taxed the ratio itself, and First asks users to hand over cash on top of trust. The community's grading curve, the instinct one commenter voiced as, quote, "not too bad of a nerf as compared to the chocolate or in Sterm," unquote, protects HeyMax today. But it protects it as a devaluing incumbent, and holders of a devaluing currency change their behavior. They redeem faster, hoard less, and stop evangelizing. That behavioral shift, not any single cut, is how the moat actually erodes. What this means for HeyMax is that the arc itself was survivable and probably necessary. The execution discipline around it is what remains optional, and it is currently the weakest part of the record. 2 weeks of notice on the partner call was defensible. 8 days on the first-ever ratio devaluation was not. A company whose economics require periodic retrenchment can keep its moat only by making retrenchment boring. Telegraphed, scheduled, and explained in cost terms the way the cash for miles sunset actually was. The falsifier I will be watching is simple. Watch the notice period on the next devaluation. If it is measured in months, this arc was right-sizing. If it is measured in days again, HeyMax is eating the moat, one bite at a time, with the community counting. Chapter 12: The People Running It. The people running HeyMax are technically exceptional, unusually communicative under fire, and structurally thin. All three of those facts matter to the Singapore story in roughly equal measure, and together they are this chapter's core claim. A four-founder engineering team out of Meta has built the most product-shaped loyalty company Singapore has seen. And its chief executive answers critics by name in blog comment sections, with his own email address attached. But the same public record shows a company of about 30 people carrying a four-market map, with no full-time chief commercial officer, one interim partnerships head, and a founder bench that has never been publicly supplemented at the executive level. This chapter profiles the people, corrects the record where the press has it wrong, and is explicit about what I could not verify. Start with the man the community simply calls Joe. His name is Joe Liu, and I pause on the name deliberately because some podcast transcripts render his surname as Nju or Njai, and those are transcription artifacts. No primary source uses them. The arc of his career runs from Shanghai to the University of Michigan, then to Expedia in Seattle, then to engineering leadership at Meta, first in San Francisco and later at the regional headquarters in Singapore. Then, in November of 2022, Meta laid him off. What makes Liu unusual is that he has never laundered this into a resignation story. He openly calls the layoff the black swan that assembled the founding team, and the Brave podcast episode he sat for is literally titled around going from a Meta layoff to HeyMax. The persona on top of the resume is the genuine article, as far as the hobby goes. He styles himself Chief Max Miles Hoarder, claims over 100 credit cards cycled, and says he has earned and burned more than 15 million personal miles since the age of 18, with a missed flight as the origin myth. He frames the company as Duolingo for personal finance. His public surface is modest but steady. Roughly 9,000 LinkedIn followers, the Brave and January Capital podcasts, and an interview on Money FM 89.3. One caution I flag as an analyst. Most of the founder narrative comes from company-adjacent channels, meaning HeyMax's own blog and Substack, and investor-hosted podcasts. So it is consistent, but it has rarely been independently reported. The other three founders are heads-down operators with near-zero public profile, and what we reliably know about them comes largely from January Capital's own diligence write-up. That is the seed investors telling, and I treat it as informed but not neutral. Sean Dai, the chief operating officer, spent about a decade at Meta as a data engineer, across San Francisco, New York, and Singapore, joining straight from graduation. Kee Wang is a senior engineer with stops at Quantcast, Indeed, and Meta, and a doctorate from the National University of Singapore on reinforcement learning in mobile networks. Jialu Zhang is the product builder, with time at Uber in San Francisco and at Instagram, and a master's in computer science from Columbia. Here is what I could not verify: the exact executive titles for Kee Wang and Zhang. They are plausibly shaped like chief technology and chief product roles, but no fetched source confirms it, and I would rather record the gap than guess. The community, notably, barely registers any of them. When a person appears in Singapore's HeyMax discourse, it is Joe, full stop. Now the discipline this book has to enforce harder than any other. There are three Wangs, and they must never be conflated. Kee Wang is the co-founder and engineer just described. David Wang, with no middle initial, is a Singapore-side product and growth operator, credited with building HeyMax's referral flywheels, and verifiably the author of at least one early company Substack post from January of 2024. That date matters because it falls 18 months before the KRIP acquisition, which is what proves he cannot be the third Wang. That third is David B. Wang, the former KRIP founder who joined through the acquisition in July of 2025 and runs Hong Kong and North Asia, and who gets a full chapter in the Hong Kong volume. My working rule is this: growth loops and Substack posts belong to Singapore's David Wang. Partnerships, Cathay, and Hong Kong belong to David B. Wang. Engineering belongs to Ki Wang. One more honest gap. I could not verify whether the Singapore David Wang is still at the company as of August 2026. He appears in no press release, and his profile is login gated. The most important correction in this chapter concerns Aikfong NG. The seed announcement of July 2024 presented him as HeyMax's Chief Commercial Officer, the former ShopBack and Fave Managing Director brought in to spearhead partnerships. The press has repeated that framing ever since, and it overstates what happened. His own first-person account, posted the day of the Series A, is unambiguous. He met Joe Liu at a venture capital mixer in January of 2024. He worked with HeyMax, in his phrase, fractionally for half a year during the pre-seed days. He was partly compensated in max miles. And he left around October of 2024 to found Arasun Energy, his Indonesia-focused climate venture. His LinkedIn headline today reads, in effect, ex-chief commercial officer of HeyMax. So the title was real, but brief and part-time, and the implication compounds. HeyMax has had no visible full-time chief commercial officer since late 2024, with no successor announcement I could find. Commercial leadership since then, as far as public sources show, has defaulted to the founders themselves, to David B. Wang's loyalty partnerships remit from the middle of 2025, and to Mark Mullenix, who joined the advisory board in July of 2023, became interim head of partnerships in February of 2024 on a fractional basis through his own firm, and appears never to have shed the word interim. Ad Alvin C., the aviation blogger, appointed Miles & Points ambassador in October of 2025, and you have the entire visible non-founder leadership layer. One fractional interim and one content hire. The bench around the company is stronger than the bench inside it, and it looks deliberately assembled. The Series A brought in Rohit Agarwal of Peak 15, along with strategic angels Rob Rosenstein, the chairman of Agoda, and David Lee, formerly president of Visa Asia Pacific. The seed had brought Sheehan Co. and JJ Chai, among others, plus Tenety, as both an investor and, later, the first corporate issuance client. Read as a network, that is a triangle of travel, payments, and banking, mapped precisely onto HeyMax's product surface. What could not be verified is board composition. I infer that Peak 15 and January Capital hold seats as round leads, but no public board list exists. Then there is the thing that makes this leadership genuinely distinctive in Singapore. Conduct under fire. The Mileslife comment record, which I walked through in the perception research, shows Joe Liu replying in thread, by name, since the skeptical launch review of September 2023, where he wrote, quote, "We'd rather underpromise in the beginning," unquote. Through the Missing Miles complaints of 2024, where he wrote, quote, "Let us fight on your behalf," unquote, and an operations staffer handed out a direct email address. To the HeyMax first flashpoint of April 2026, where he posted 4 or more substantive replies within a single day, signing off as Joe, CEO at HeyMax. He publishes his own work email in comment sections. I know of no Singapore bank, and certainly no ShopBack, that operates this way. But the record also shows the limit of the style. The hardest structural challenges in the first thread drew no visible reply. Not the commenter operating under the handle Ponzi, with the line about financial engineering without a banking license. Not the commenter threatening to write to MAS. What they drew instead, 7 weeks later, was product. The June 2026 revisions that made the silver tier free and made reclaim eligibility indefinite answered April's objections point by point, and Mileslife covered them as exactly that. Answering economics with product changes while leaving regulatory questions unaddressed is a pattern, and I will return to it in the threats chapter. The community's net read, though, is worth stating plainly. These are seen as builders, responsive to a fault. The worry Singapore's optimizer's voice is counterparty risk, never character. No personal criticism of any founder appears anywhere in the material I reviewed. Set against all this credibility is the arithmetic of thinness. The team grew from roughly 10 people to roughly 30 in the year to March 2026, when the Singapore headquarters opened with Minister of State Alvin Tan as guest of honor and a pledge to double local headcount by 2027. 30 people are carrying the home market and its tightening controversies of 2025 and 2026. Hong Kong, live since November of 2025. Australia, quietly launched back in November of 2023 to a depth no one has ever published. And Japan and Taiwan, promised by the end of 2026 with nothing launched as of August. No notable departures surfaced in public sources, but I note that as an absence of evidence, not as evidence of stability. What this means for HeyMax is that the org chart is now the strategy's binding constraint. The Singapore agenda the later chapters lay out, the influencer repair, the devaluation notice policy, the institutional partnerships with the trust banks and simply goes of the market, is by my estimate 80% supply and repair work that needs a senior, full-time commercial owner. And HeyMax has not had one since Aikfong and wound down his fractional half-year. The founder's engineering excellence explains everything good about the product. The empty chief commercial officer chair explains a good deal of what is missing around it. The cleanest early signal that the Series A money is being spent on the actual bottleneck would be a name in that chair. Full-time, Singapore-based, and announced with less fanfare than the last one. Chapter 13, What Singapore Actually Thinks. Singapore's sentiment toward HeyMax has not tipped, it has stratified. That is the core claim of this chapter, and it is the most important perception finding in this volume. 3 publics now look at the same company and see 3 different things. The optimizer core sees a counterparty who's credited audits. The casual public sees a useful tool with a slow support queue. And the mainstream sees just another venture-funded startup that will eventually flip or fold. Holding those 3 readings together is a reservoir of goodwill, built on free utility and personal founder engagement. And hanging over all of it is the one question a Straits Times journalist put on the record in June of 2025, which HeyMax's chief executive declined to answer. The place to measure the optimizer core is Mileslife, because Mileslife is HeyMax's de facto paper of record. 298 posts mention the company as of August 2026, 35 of them dedicated pieces, arriving at a near-monthly cadence since 2024. Aaron Wong's own arc is the cleanest single line through the story. His first review in September of 2023 was openly skeptical. Quote, "You're taking on considerable risk by choosing Max over an established option like ShopBack," unquote. By May of 2026, announcing the cash for Miles' sunset, he opened with the strongest endorsement he has ever given, calling HeyMax one of the most exciting things to happen in the Miles game in recent memory. And then, in the same post, he wrote that it always struck him as unsustainable. By the HeyMax first guide of July 2026, he was writing sentences that belong in a bank prospectus. Quote, "You're effectively extending an interest-free loan to HeyMax," unquote, with the opportunity cost and platform risk not to be ignored. Skeptic, then convert, then engaged auditor. Note what changed. The word risk bookends the whole relationship, but its category escalated from holding risk in 2023 to explicit counterparty credit risk in 2026. That escalation is, to my eye, the single clearest perception shift in the whole Singapore record. The comment sections underneath those posts are where the Singapore hobbyist id speaks, and they sort into 3 eras almost too neatly. The 2023 era was threshold skepticism. As one launch post commenter put it, the 10,000 minimum was a deal breaker. The 2024 era was tracking distrust. A reader named Bale reported over $10,000 of Qatar tickets untracked for more than a month and suggested caution. Another had been waiting for a reply about missing Miles since January of 2024. By 2025, the doubt turned quantitative. One commenter watched HeyMax issue a $65 gift card to fulfill 2,000 avios and concluded the company, quote, "won't survive at this level of cost," unquote. And by April of 2026, at the HeyMax first announcement, it turned structural. A commenter posting under the handle Ponzi wrote, quote, brilliant financial engineering that doesn't even require the company to have a proper banking license, unquote. Another invoked the ghost that haunts every Singapore Miles scheme, asking whether anyone remembered Mileslife and what would happen if HeyMax suddenly closed down. A third mused about contacting MAS. Set against that drumbeat is the counterweight that keeps the core loyal. Named HeyMax staff, including the chief executive, answered inside those threads at every flashpoint. And the June 2026 revisions to First, the free tier, and the indefinite reclaim directly answered April's objections. The comment section functions as de facto product quality assurance, and HeyMax visibly knows its reputation is made or broken there. Reddit tells a different story, and it corrects an assumption I carried into this research. There was no too-good-to-be-true phase on Singapore Reddit. None. HeyMax entered the Singapore personal finance subreddit in April of 2023 as a free merchant category code lookup utility, normalized as infrastructure before its earn and burn product ever had to win a trust debate. By 2024, it was discussed the way ShopBack is. How to stack it, not whether to trust it. The highest scored archived comment is pure optimizer arithmetic. Quote, Chalk Finance plus HeyMax gives a guaranteed 3.6% thanks to Fly Everywhere, so might as well use it, unquote. The complaints of 2026 are operational, not existential. A thread about 16,000 miles being hard to cash out drew power users patiently explaining Scoot returns. Most strikingly, the HeyMax first controversy never reached Reddit at all. Searches for it as a topic return 0 threads. Sentiment has split by venue. Blog comment sophisticates debate solvency, while Reddit debates redemption experience, which means the counterparty risk discourse, though sharp, is contained in a small room. Step outside the hobbyist bubble, though, and the register changes to default startup cynicism. On the syndicated story about HeyMax's Japan ambitions, the top comment on the main Singapore subreddit ran, quote, take investors, fund expand to the max. When things about to implode, quickly hope Moneysmart or other bigger platform buy out them, unquote. The one commenter defending HeyMax from first-hand experience was downvoted. The chocolate finance crisis of March 2025 is the natural experiment that quantifies the goodwill. When chocolate paused instant withdrawals and 500 million Singapore dollars ran out the door, the biggest thread on the main Singapore subreddit reached 634 points and 304 comments. Not one comment mentioned HeyMax. In the second biggest thread, exactly 2 did, including one commenter who simply felt sorry for HeyMax because, in his words, a shit partner had essentially wrecked things for them. In its home market's largest adjacent fintech crisis, HeyMax was framed as victim, not culprit. That is the strongest single piece of evidence for the reservoir. But the episode had a second-order effect. It seeded the sustainability vocabulary that has attached to every HeyMax controversy since. The blogger who did assign HeyMax co-authorship was Mileslife, and his words are the harshest in the Singapore record. Quote, I'm just not a fan of HeyMax's unsustainable promos and pump and dump way of doing things, unquote. And of the card's 4-month nerf, quote, you simply can't perform stunts like this and expect to be treated seriously, unquote. What happened next matters as much as the words. Sudasmile went silent on HeyMax after September of 2025. No first coverage, no cuts coverage. The market's designated skeptic disengaged rather than escalated, which is better than hostility and worse than it sounds, because silence from a channel with 18,000 readers is lost distribution. The sharpest dated defection belongs to a smaller voice. In February of 2026, the Shudder Whale, a self-described former huge advocate of HeyMax, published a piece whose thesis fits in 3 of its own lines. Never be blindly loyal to one platform. Cashback does not suffer from devaluation. And when values run close, cash is king. One blogger changing his mind moves few users. But an advocate publicly converting to cash, citing stuck balances below the 10,000 minimum and devaluation risk, is the tightening arc of the last chapter rendered as testimony. Then there is the signal the community's warmth cannot explain away. The app stores. As of August 2026, HeyMax sits at 3.7 stars on both the Apple and Google storefronts in Singapore, against ShopBack's 4.6 from 23,000 ratings. The review stream splits into two unmistakable patterns. First, a solicited burst. Roughly 24 five-star reviews clustered between the 11th and 18th of February, 2025, in the glow of the chocolate card launch, full of interchangeable praise. Second, an organic one-star drumbeat with a single dominant theme, which is customer support failure. One review says it takes more than a month to get a single reply. Another, titled Scam App, describes Fly Anywhere redemptions always rejected for partial redemption reasons. Others report 2-month silences and bugs waved away. I read this carefully. The scam idiom appears only in individual grievances, never as community consensus, and the complaints target support capacity, not the concept. But for a company whose core ask is hold our private currency, a month of silence on a redemption ticket is not a user experience flaw. It is a tiny default, experienced one user at a time. Mainstream Singapore, finally, has barely engaged at all. The Business Times covered the Series A as a funding story. CNA has never run a dedicated HeyMax piece. The entire earned mainstream editorial record is one article. The Straits Times, on the 17th of June, 2025, profiled the company's Japan ambitions, attached the chocolate episode, and reported that Joe Liu declined to comment on it or on the sustainability of HeyMax's other partnerships. The critical function that business journalism normally performs is being performed instead by a blogger's comment section. And the one time a mainstream journalist asked the load-bearing question, it went unanswered. That question is now permanently on the record, waiting. What this means for HeyMax is that its home market reputation is best understood as a balance sheet, not a mood. The assets are real, unmatched free utility, a chief executive who shows up, a crisis weathered with the blame landing elsewhere, a core that stays because the product is, in the community's own idiom, too useful to drop. The liabilities compound quietly. An escalating risk vocabulary, a defected advocate, a silent skeptic, a support queue writing one-star testimony every month. Nothing has tipped. Grumbling but loyal is a genuinely stable state, and Singapore grades HeyMax on the curve of everyone else's nerfs. But the three publics are held together by exactly two things: the free tier's generosity and the founder's personal credibility, and both are precisely what HeyMax First's economics and the next funding cycle will test. Sentiment will not be lost in an explosion. It will be lost the way the shutter whale was lost, one quiet, reasonable, published change of mind at a time. Chapter 14, Opportunities. HeyMax has 5 real openings in Singapore, and every one of them was created by somebody else's retreat. That is the core claim of this chapter. The aspirational vacuum the coin Economies abandoned. The wound Kris Plus inflicted on itself. A challenger bank tier hungry for differentiation. A transit rail nobody owns. And the re-import of the institutional issuance model, HeyMax already proved in Hong Kong. None of these is speculative. Each has a dated trigger event in the record, a named counterparty, and a reason it is available now rather than 2 years ago. The work of this chapter is to size them honestly, ceilings included, and to end on the sharpest one. Begin with the vacuum, because it is the largest and the least appreciated. Singapore's daily behavior platforms have spent 2024 through 2026 methodically retreating from aspirational rewards. Grab replaced Grab rewards with Grab coins in November of 2025. Tiers removed, coins worth roughly 1/5 of a cent, expiring in 6 months. Shopee coins are worth about 1 cent and expire in 3. Laz coins live in the same closed loop. And then there is the parable that frames them all. The marketplace Q10, spelled QO10, was wound up by the Singapore High Court in November of 2024, with claims exceeding $198 million, and its points died with it. That is the definitive local lesson in what a closed-loop currency is worth when the loop closes. Against this backdrop, the Max Miles pitch is almost embarrassingly clean. a currency that never expires, transferring one-to-one into 20 airline and hotel programs. In the Hong Kong volume, the vacuum argument was about a scarce earning environment. In Singapore, it is about incumbents choosing, deliberately and simultaneously, to stop selling dreams. The aspirational lane, the trip, the cabin upgrade, the thing a household actually saves toward, is structurally open, and the platforms that own daily behavior have all just priced themselves out of it. The second opening was a gift from the incumbent. Kris Plus is the most direct in-store competitor HeyMax faces. First-party, SIA-branded, riding the strongest loyalty brand in the country. And in July of 2025, it devalued itself. Miles standardized at 1 cent. More than 250 merchants cut. Average earn rates falling roughly 40%, from around 6.2 miles per dollar down to 3.3. All of it wrapped in a 21-day auto-sweep and 6-month expiry mechanics. The incumbent's lifestyle app chose margin over generosity, at precisely the moment HeyMax's whole identity is generosity with flexibility. The ceiling on this opening is real and must be stated. The audience Kris Plus disappointed wants KrisFlyer miles, and Max miles cannot convert directly to KrisFlyer. Mileslife put it flatly in August of 2026. The only workaround is the unfavorable backdoor through U, spelled YUU, at a ratio of roughly 0.83 to 1. HeyMax cannot capture these users' destination. What it can capture is their daily earn, their dining, their vouchers, and their redemptions outside SIA. That is a narrower win than it first appears, but it is a win the incumbent keeps subsidizing every month the Kris Plus value proposition stays cut. The third opening is the challenger tier of Singapore finance, and it is really a cluster of doors with one master key. TrustBank became Singapore's first profitable digital bank in March of 2026 and passed 1 million customers by June. And its loyalty spine, the LinkPoints program run by NTUC Link, had its KrisFlyer rail devalued to a flat 2 cents per mile in July of 2025, at almost the same moment rival DFI's U program was getting a Max Miles bridge. That is competitive symmetry begging to be exploited. One grocery retail block already has HeyMax, and the other just watched its miles path get worse. U-Trip has no rewards program at all, while Revolut attacks it with Rev Points. Standard Chartered culled its transfer partners down to 2 in March of 2024, and now sells a Beyond card costing $1,635, with threadbare redemption options. GXS sits in the aspirational vacuum, its own parent created when GrabCoins shipped. And Foodpanda, since Deliveroo's exit in March of 2026, is the number 2 in a delivery duopoly needing a differentiator, with the elegant property that a single delivery hero deal covers Singapore and Hong Kong at once. The master key is the same pitch in every room. Every KrisFlyer adjacent rail in the market devalued between 2024 and 2026, while Max Miles held 1-to-1 across 20 programs. HeyMax is the only rewards partner a challenger can sign whose currency got relatively stronger. The fourth opening is the strangest. A rail HeyMax has already proven it can electrify in a market where nobody owns it. Singapore has no transit loyalty anchor. Comfort Delgro's Zig Rewards ceased in February of 2025, and Simply Go and EZ-Link sit exactly where Octopus sat in Hong Kong before HeyMax got there. The literal analog, unmonetized. Here is the irony the record makes unmissable. HeyMax's Hong Kong Visa commute campaign, a centerpiece of the launch story I told in the previous volume, was the Singapore Rail exported. The MRT and bus campaigns of 2024 and 2025, paying 3 to 6 miles per dollar, ran at home first. But they ran on Visa's merchant category code detection, not on any deal with the transit operator itself. The fast path is to replicate the export at home, properly this time. A Simply Go or EZ-Link partnership would convert a proven campaign mechanic into an institutional anchor, put Max Miles into the daily commute of a nation, and close the strangest gap in the story. HeyMax built a transit playbook in Singapore, upgraded it in Hong Kong, and never signed the operator in either home direction. Which brings me to the fifth opening, the one that contains the other four. The re-import. The through line of this volume's partner chapters has been that Singapore's issuance web is fintech-flavored and anchorless. Chocolate's card, the Atom Bridge, the Two-Way U Bridge, the HSBC application funnel, Tennity's corporate benefits. Hong Kong, meanwhile, got the upgraded version, an institutional anchor at octopus scale and embedded issuance. The Hong Kong network was the Singapore playbook exported and improved. The home market now needs the improvement imported back. And the bridgeheads already exist. The DBSU card converts 10 miles per dollar into KrisFlyer or Max Miles. Mileslife calls it a dedicated Max Miles earner, which means Singapore's biggest bank already operates, half-knowingly, a Max Miles issuance product. The U-Bridge runs in both directions. What is missing is the anchor institution that makes issuance ambient rather than opt-in. The thing octopus is in Hong Kong. Ranked soberly, with ceilings acknowledged, it comes out like this. The vacuum is the biggest surface but the slowest to monetize because vacuums do not sign contracts. The Kris Plus opening is free but capped by the KrisFlyer gap. Transit is high leverage but single-threaded through government-adjacent procurement. The challenger tier is where deals actually close on venture timelines. And the re-import is not a separate opening so much as the strategic frame that tells HeyMax which door matters most. That door has a name, and closing on it is the point of this chapter. NTUC Link plus Trust Bank is the sharpest opportunity HeyMax has in its home market. The crown jewel, and I use the research's own word deliberately. Consider what it uniquely combines. Trust is the first profitable Singapore digital bank with 1 million customers and a bank's distribution. That is the institutional scale that Chocolate Finance, at its best, never had, and whose absence defined the blow-up of March 2025. NTUC Link brings Link Points, a heartland grocery loyalty scheme woven into the national supermarket, whose members just watched their KrisFlyer path devalue to a flat 2 cents. And the competitive wedge is already cut. DFI, the direct retail rival, got its Max Miles bridge in 2026, so the pitch to NTUC is not, try something new. It is, your competitors' points now reach 20 airlines at 1-to-1, and yours reach 1 program at a worse rate than last year. A deal spanning trust and NTUC would give Singapore what Hong Kong already has, an institutional anchor issuing Max Miles at national scale, while simultaneously being the challenger bank win, the vacuum play, and the re-import, all in one signature. What this means for HeyMax is that the Series A thesis for Singapore should not be spread across 10 partnership conversations of equal weight. 4 of the 5 openings reward patience. 1 rewards concentration. Every quarter the trust and NTUC door stays unopened, the wedge dulls. Link Points can recut a KrisFlyer deal. A rival aggregator can pitch the symmetry. Or Ascenda can arm the bank directly, a threat the next chapter takes up in earnest. The sharpest opportunity in the Singapore record is also the most perishable one, and it is sitting above a supermarket. Chapter 15, Threats. The scenarios that could kill HeyMax in Singapore are concrete, dateable, and mostly internal. That is this chapter's core claim, and it inverts the way startup risk is usually told. The convention is to worry about what the giants will do to the challenger. In HeyMax's case, the record says the giants are slow, conflicted, or retreating, while the mechanisms most likely to end the company are ones it operates itself. A tightening arc that taxes trust. A support function writing 1-star testimony every month, and a flagship product whose structure invites a regulator's attention. The externals are real too, and one of them has already fired. My method here is the same as in the Hong Kong volume. Rank each threat by likelihood times severity, as lived forward from August 2026 and close on the sharpest. First and highest ranked, compounding trust erosion through the tightening arc. Likelihood high because this is not a scenario. It is a trend line already drawn. Chapter 11 traced the events. Chapter 13 measured the response, and the response is the threat. The risk vocabulary of the optimizer core escalated in 3 steps. Tracking distrust in 2024. Sustainability doubt in 2025. Explicit counterparty credit risk in 2026, complete with a commenter handle reading Ponzi, comparisons to Mileslife, and invocations of MAS. The market's designated skeptic, Pseudosmile, went silent. A former advocate, the shutter whale, published his conversion to cash, and each new cut is received with resignation, the can't say I'm surprised shrug, which means future devaluation is now priced in. Why is that severe, rather than merely sad? Because a priced-in devaluation expectation changes holder behavior. Users redeem faster, hoard less, and stop evangelizing. And faster redemption is itself a cost shock to a company whose economics already force the cuts. Trust erosion in a private currency business is reflexive. The belief that the currency will weaken is, mechanically, what weakens it. And Singapore has two fresh corpses that teach exactly this lesson. Mileslife, which wound down in 2018 and 2019 holding user value. And Q10, whose points died with the company in the court wind-up of November 2024. The community cites both by name. That memory is why this threat compounds instead of resetting. Second, the customer service and app quality gap. Likelihood, high, because it is present tense, not hypothetical. The signal is unambiguous. 3.7 stars on both Singapore app stores, against ShopBack's 4.6 from 23,000 ratings, with the organic negative reviews carrying a single dominant theme. Support silences stretching past a month, and Fly Anywhere redemptions rejected as partial, with one review titled simply, Scam App. On its own, this ranks as medium severity. Niche products survive mediocre ratings. What elevates it is its coupling to Threat One. HeyMax's ask of every user is, hold our currency and trust us to make it good. An unanswered redemption ticket is that promise defaulting in miniature, one user at a time, in public. The App Store record is the fuel line of the Threat One flywheel. And it is the cheapest of all the threats to fix, which makes its persistence, 4 years and 11 million Series A dollars in, itself a signal worth worrying about. Third, HeyMax First's regulatory surface. Likelihood, medium. Severity, high. The structure, membership fees of up to 1,999 Singapore dollars, miles advanced upfront, draw fees reclaimable through future earning, drew the sharpest language in the entire Singapore record. Quote, brilliant financial engineering that doesn't even require the company to have a proper banking license, unquote. A commenter musing about contacting MAS. And from the professional side, Loyalty and Reward Co.'s review of July 2026, flagging the debt overhang of member capital parked at a venture-funded startup, and stating that if Fly Now Earn Later models scale, their Buy Now Pay Later adjacent characteristics are likely to draw scrutiny. HeyMax's response pattern, as Chapter 12 noted, was product tweaks. A free tier. Indefinite reclaim, not a published regulatory explanation, and the severity math is asymmetric. CNA has never run a dedicated HeyMax story, and the mainstream barely knows the company at all, which means a regulator's inquiry would not dent an existing reputation so much as create one. For a company whose only earned mainstream editorial already contains the sentence that its chief executive declined to comment on sustainability, the first MAS headline is the second impression that sticks. Fourth, the leading external and the one that has already begun, SIA gating. In July of 2026, KrisFlyer imposed an award search crackdown, a minimum balance of roughly 1,500 miles just to search, reportedly triggered in part by HeyMax's own award companion tool. Read that carefully. The Incumbent noticed a third-party tool and moved to gate it within weeks. This sits on top of the structural fact this volume keeps returning to that max miles cannot convert to KrisFlyer, with only the unfavorable U backdoor at a ratio of roughly 0.83 to 1. And it sits on top of KrisFlyer's own tightening. The November 2025 devaluation with dynamic access awards. The 1 cent floor on cash redemptions. SIA cannot kill max miles, and it will never need to sue or acquire. It can simply keep raising the wall between HeyMax and the one program Singaporeans actually dream in. Likelihood of continued gating, high. Severity per move, medium, but cumulative, because every brick makes the flexible KrisFlyer alternative pitch a little more alternative and a little less KrisFlyer. Fifth, Ascenda arms a bank. The Singapore-based business-to-business player's Transfer Connect product can hand any bank a HeyMax equivalent transfer capability, essentially overnight. And this is not a theory. It did exactly that for DBS Hong Kong in April of 2026. I called Ascenda the biggest structural threat in the canonical record, and I stand by the adjective. Structural because it attacks the moat's foundation. HeyMax's defensibility rests on being the only multi-program transfer layer a Singapore consumer can hold. A DBS, or a trust bank, running Ascenda rails would replicate that redemption breadth inside an institution that already has the customers, the trust, and a banking license. The exact three things HeyMax's critics say it lacks. Likelihood, medium, because banks move slowly, and the big ones treat rewards as a captive cost center. Severity, high, and the DBS Hong Kong precedent means the pitch deck is already written. It is one boardroom decision away from being presented in Singapore. Sixth and lowest ranked, ShopBack adds a miles payout. The shape is obvious. 45 million users group-wide, a 4.6-star app, $1 billion Singapore dollars of cumulative cashback, and a model that stops exactly where HeyMax's begins. A ShopBack miles currency, or a partnership handing its cashback a transfer layer, would contest HeyMax's category with tenfold distribution. But the audited numbers for financial year 2025 argue against adventurism. An operating loss of just over $23 million, operating cash outflow, equity of negative $230 million. The headline profit was a fair value artifact on preference shares, and alongside all that, a pattern of retrenchment. The buy now pay later product killed in 2024, ShopBack Pay dead in Malaysia. A company-cutting product lines rarely launches a loyalty currency, which is a balance sheet commitment dressed as a feature. Likelihood, low for now. Severity, high if it happens. Ranking, watch, don't dread. Rank them together, and the pattern the core claim promised becomes visible. The top of the table is internal. SIA's gating is real but incremental. Ascenda and ShopBack are contingent on other companies' decisions. Trust erosion, the support gap, and First's regulatory surface are all running now, all compounding, and all within HeyMax's own control. Which is either the most reassuring or the most damning thing in this chapter, depending on what the company does next. And they interlock, which is where I close, because the sharpest threat is not any single row in the ranking. It is the compound scenario in which the internal three fire together. Walk it forward. A surprise devaluation lands with 8 days of notice, as Accors did. The optimizer core, which already runs an implicit credit committee on HeyMax, moves to redeem. The support queue, already a month deep, jams. Partial redemption rejections multiply in public. And this time, there are HeyMax first balances in the system. Member money that transforms a loss of confidence from churn into something with the mechanics of a run. Singapore has seen the tempo. $500 million left chocolate finance in 2 weeks, and HeyMax watched that from the front row. What this means for HeyMax is blunt. The defense against the sharpest threat is boring and entirely available. A published devaluation notice policy, a support service level agreement that someone is accountable for, and radical transparency about how first balances are held. None of that requires a partner, a regulator's blessing, or another funding round. The kill scenario in Singapore is self-inflicted. Which is the good news, because it is the only kind of threat a 30-person company gets to veto. Chapter 16, The Influencer Map. In the Hong Kong volume, the influencer chapter was a story about absence. The biggest personalities in that market had never covered HeyMax, and the whole business development job was to open doors. Singapore is the mirror image, and that is the core claim of this chapter. Every voice that matters in Singapore Miles Media already covers HeyMax. One covers it exhaustively, one commercially, one hostilely, and one barely. So the map that matters here is not who to reach. It is what each existing relationship actually is, who moves the market, and what it would cost to deepen or repair each one. This is not an audience waiting to hear about HeyMax. It is a press corps that already reports on it, and the home market question is what that press corps is given to report. Structure first, because Singapore differs from Hong Kong in a way that shapes every tactic that follows. Hong Kong's Miles community runs on Facebook groups. Singapore's runs on Telegram. At my August 2026 fetches, the Mile Lions discussion group held 35,391 members, with a separate alerts channel at 35,686 subscribers. Miles channel stood at about 18,900. Mainly Miles counted 4,043. And HeyMax's own community channel sits alongside them, competing for the same attention. Distribution here is a forward button. A promotion that fits in one screenshot with a clean deadline propagates through these channels for free. But a devaluation propagates exactly the same way, at the same speed, with the same production values. The anchor of the map is the Mile Lion. Aaron Wang graduated from SMU in 2013, spent 5 years in management consulting, and then went full-time on the blog he founded in May 2015. He is the closest thing Singapore has to a Miles paper of record, and for HeyMax that is nearly literal. As of August 2026, 298 Mile Lion posts mention the company, 35 of them dedicated articles, running at 2 to 3 pieces a month. The relationship is already commercial. His HeyMax articles carry a disclosed referral block that pays readers 200 bonus max miles. And the coverage is nonetheless bluntly independent. He has covered every nerf, devaluation, and partner removal within days, links attached. I traced his arc in the perception chapter. He was a skeptic in 2023 when his first review warned of, quote, considerable risk, unquote, compared with an established option like ShopBack. He became a convert through 2024 and 2025. By 2026, he was an engaged auditor, opening his post on the May cuts by calling HeyMax one of the most exciting things to happen in the Miles game, and then stating flatly that cash for Miles, quote, always struck me as unsustainable, unquote. His independence is his product, and what he supplies HeyMax is something no marketing budget can produce: institutional treatment. He writes about a 3-year-old startup the way he writes about DBS, as an entity whose every change matters. What he costs is, in cash, ordinary affiliate economics; in kind, an absolute prohibition on touching editorial. The available deepening is early briefings under embargo, co-built tools in the vein of his award companion, and sponsorship of his community meetups. That buys accuracy and timing, never favor. Anyone at HeyMax tempted to think otherwise should reread the word unsustainable in a post that carries HeyMax referral links. Second, the live rail, Sethify. Seth, we spent 16 years as a licensed financial advisor before going full-time on content, and it shows in the framing. Plain English, what he actually uses, and a published editorial policy promising prominent labels on anything sponsored. 2 structural facts make him more important than his roughly 13,000 YouTube subscribers suggest. First, the referral relationship is already live and instrumented. His site's HeyMax page redirects through a tracked adjust deep link, which makes it a working, measurable pipe rather than a handshake. Second, and more remarkable, he pays his own card sign-up bonuses in Max Miles. The currency has become the payout rail for the deals he promotes. HeyMax is not merely covered by his ecosystem, it pays his ecosystem. He is also the only dedicated Singapore Miles voice with functioning YouTube muscle, which matters in a market whose dedicated creators are otherwise text-first. His stance is friendly affiliate with community standard honesty. His Accor coverage in June 2026 began, like everyone else's, with the word nerfed. Third, the wound, Pseudosmile. Phi's Telegram channel, at 18,900 subscribers, is roughly half the size of Mile Lion's group, which still makes it a genuinely large megaphone. Its HeyMax file is the chocolate finance card, saga from end to end. Enthusiastic launch coverage in February 2025. Emergency limits in March. The halving of the earn rate about 4 months after launch, and then the June 2025 verdicts that still define the critical case. Quote, "I'm just not a fan of HeyMax's unsustainable promos and pump and dump way of doing things." Unquote. And quote, "You simply can't perform stunts like this and expect to be treated seriously." Unquote. Then comes the fact I find most telling: silence. My searches found no HeyMax coverage from him after September 2025. No HeyMax first piece, no partner call piece, nothing through the entire 2026 tightening. The harshest critic did not escalate. He disengaged. A channel of 18,000 subscribers going quiet on you is not neutrality. It is lost distribution, and it was lost for free through product behavior, not any commercial slight. The repair path runs through product behavior too. A published rate integrity and devaluation notice policy has to exist before any approach, because money offered early would itself become content. And note the hopeful detail: his early chocolate coverage was enthusiastic. He wanted the product to be good. That makes him winnable on evidence, not charm. Fourth, the gap, mainly Miles. Andrew runs Singapore's most aviation institutional desk. Daily cadence, cabin scoops, award chart mechanics, 4,043 Telegram subscribers, and a KrisFlyer-centric readership. He has mentioned HeyMax exactly once, ever: an October 2024 roundup of Qatar transfer bonuses, in which HeyMax sat matter-of-factly beside CD and HSBC as a point source. That single placement is quietly some of the most flattering coverage HeyMax has anywhere: an aviation desk listing a startup currency alongside bank programs, without caveats. But one mention in 3 years makes this Singapore's only Tier 1 awareness gap, the sole spot on the map where the Hong Kong playbook of opening doors still applies. Their beat is airline partnerships. Every HeyMax partner edition, JAL, Cathay, Flying Blue, is native content for a desk that has simply never been supplied. It is the lowest friction opportunity on the map. Fifth, the amplifier tier, adjacent rather than core. Kelvin learns investing is the big screen, around 110,000 YouTube subscribers, personal finance rather than Miles native, routinely running labeled sponsorships. One hero video there buys more Singapore video reach than every dedicated Miles channel combined. The woke salaryman, at roughly 500,000 Instagram followers, is the cultural tier: comic format finance, total creative control, and no appetite for promo work. What lands there is an evergreen truth about how points actually work, not a campaign. And one correction my research forced on me: Points Yeah, which entered my brief as a possible Singapore creator, is an American award search tool, not a creator at all. Nobody by that name needs courting. Sixth, the layer that cannot be bought at any price. Hardware Zone's MoneyMind forum runs to 19,000 threads, and its norms are written into its thread titles. The Chocolate Finance thread, 1,000 replies, 296,000 views, still active when I checked, is titled, quote, "No referrals," unquote. That is the whole sociology in 2 words. Grassroots sentiment in Singapore is earned in screenshots of transfers posting on time and destroyed in screenshots of support tickets going unanswered. The only legitimate presence there is a clearly badged staff account fixing problems in public. The same logic covers Reddit, where HeyMax normalized as a free utility years before anyone debated trusting it. Step back and the map reads like this. The 2 most engaged voices are already monetized affiliates. The 3rd largest megaphone was lost, not to a competitor, but to product whiplash. The 4th desk was never courted. The mass reach tier is available for ordinary sponsorship money, but pointless to buy until the story it would amplify stops changing underneath it. And the grassroots layer prices HeyMax daily on operational reliability alone. In Hong Kong, I concluded that the absence of commercial relationships was the single biggest business development gap. Singapore is the inversion. The relationships exist, the coverage is constant, and the recurring damage is self-inflicted. Every surprise change, the chocolate halving, and a core devaluation on roughly 8 days' notice, the cash for Miles sunset, converts this friendly press corps into obligatory critics for a news cycle, because covering nerfs promptly is precisely what makes these outlets trustworthy. What this means for HeyMax is this. In its home market, the company owns an asset most consumer businesses never get: a professional, technically fluent, partly self-funded press corps that treats it as an institution and answers to its readers, not to HeyMax. And it has been spending that asset on surprises. The next chapter sets out how to work this map, and I will show my sequencing in full. The uncomfortable preview. The highest return move on the entire map is not a deal with any of the 6 names above. It sits upstream of all of them. Chapter 17, Working the Map. Singapore influencer strategy is supply and repair, not awareness. I would size it at roughly 20% deal-making and 80% feeding and fixing a press corps that already exists. And the single highest return move available is not a contract with any outlet at all. It is a published devaluation notice policy. That is the core claim of this chapter, and the logic is mechanical. Every surprise cut converts friendly coverage into an obligatory negative news cycle, because the outlets that cover HeyMax most sympathetically are trustworthy precisely to the extent that they report every nerf fast and bluntly. Buying more coverage without fixing the surprise pattern just buys more people who are obliged to write the next bad story. Start with the evidence, because I want this to rest on the record rather than on communications theory. The chocolate card's earn rate was halved about 4 months after launch, on roughly 4 weeks' notice. That cycle produced Sudasmile's pump and dump verdict, and over time, the permanent loss of a channel of nearly 19,000 subscribers. The April 2025 redemption overhaul landed on the community essentially same day. The cash for Miles sunset and the removal of 17 transfer partners came with about 2 weeks' warning. The Accor devaluation, from 1-to-1 down to 3-to-2, arrived with roughly 8 days' notice. Each of these forced Mileslife, Satisfy, and the Telegram deal layer to run a devaluation story about a company they broadly like. Worse than the anger is the resignation. By 2026, Aaron Wang's standard reaction had become, quote, "I can't say I'm surprised," unquote. And a Mileslife commenter graded the partner cull as, quote, "not too bad of a nerf," unquote, compared to everyone else's. When your friendliest press corps has priced in your next devaluation, every positive announcement you make carries a standing discount. So Tier 0 of working the map is not a media relationship at all. It is a public rate integrity commitment, a stated notice period for any transfer ratio devaluation or partner removal. 60 to 90 days is the range I would defend, plus grandfathering norms for Miles already held, and a permanent public page listing every rate change with dates. The cost is real. It constrains pricing agility in exactly the way the tightening arc of 2025 and 2026 suggests management values. But the return is structural. It converts every future cut from an ambush into scheduled news. It removes the entire foundation of the harshest critics case, which was never about generosity, but about whiplash. And it is the precondition that every other move in this chapter shares. Without it, Tiers 1 through 5 are just a larger audience for the next disappointment. Tier 1, Deepen Mileslife. The deal shape is a formal early briefing channel, embargoed product news with enough lead time for accuracy pre-checks, meaning HeyMax sends the terms and conditions before launch rather than correcting coverage after. Add upgraded reader referral economics, because his audience responds to stackable value, and the current 200-mile bonus is modest. Add co-built utilities. His readers loved Award Companion, and a live table of effective cents per mile by transfer partner is the kind of tool that is both genuinely useful and quietly an argument for the currency. Add sponsorship of his community meetups. The independence-preserving structure matters as much as the spend. Community sponsorship, not content sponsorship. Never a request for edits. And an internal expectation that he will keep publishing words like unsustainable when warranted, which HeyMax should treat as free consulting, since his criticisms of the last 3 years have been a reliable map of what later broke. Tier 2, expand Satisfy. This is the fastest yes in the market because the pipe already exists. The adjust tracked referral redirect means attribution is measurable from day one. The expansion is a tiered referral upgrade. Access to a monthly promo calendar so his deal posts can be planned rather than reactive. And the first properly labeled sponsored video explainer, because he is the only dedicated Miles voice in Singapore with working YouTube distribution. His published constraint, he only recommends what he would tell friends and family to use, is not a media demand. It is a product requirement wearing a media face, and it points at the same Tier 0 fix. Tier 3, close the mainly Miles gap. Treat them like an airline trade desk, because that is what they are. Embargoed notice of partner additions, transfer bonus exclusives, and standard affiliate terms to match what the rest of the market gets. Their beat is airline partnerships, so JAL, Cathay, and Flying Blue News is native supply for a daily cadence they must feed anyway. The prize is not reach. 4,000 Telegram subscribers is the smallest of the Tier 1 numbers. The prize is placement. When the most KrisFlyer-centric desk in Singapore lists, Max Miles matter-of-factly beside CD and HSBC points. As it did once in October 2024, a startup currency is being institutionally normalized in front of exactly the audience that defaults to the incumbent. Converting one incidental mention in 3 years into systematic coverage is cheap, and nobody else on the map delivers that specific legitimacy. Tier 4, repair Pseudosmile and only now. The sequence is strict. Policy first, then a private briefing on what changed, then an invitation to self-funded product access. His declared trust signal is that he pays his own way, so HeyMax offers access, never freebies. And then, if he engages, the first interview about the stability regime. No money at any early step. A commercial offer before trust is re-established would itself become a story, and he has shown he writes those. The prize justifies the patience. A critic whose arc runs enthusiastic, burned, and then visibly repaired is the single most credible endorsement available in this market, worth more than any sponsored placement, precisely because everyone knows he cannot be bought. And if he proves unwinnable, the Tier 0 policy still neutralizes his thesis on the merits. Tier 5, amplify last. One labeled hero video with Kelvin Learns Investing, the honest version of the story that ordinary spending became a business-class seat, and one evergreen woke salarymen comic on when points beat cashback, and when they don't. Together, that is roughly 600,000 followers of adjacent reach, the largest single placement audiences in Singapore finance media. The reason this comes last is not budget. Amplification is a multiplier on whatever story exists when it lands. Pointed at the current cadence of surprises, it would simply recruit a bigger audience for the next nerf cycle. Beneath the tiers runs the always-on layer, which costs almost nothing and cannot be skipped. Design promotions to be forwardable, one screenshot, a clear deadline, a clean referral hook, because Singapore's distribution is Telegram's forward button and the deal channels propagate good promos for free. Put a clearly badged HeyMax staff account into Hardware Zone and Reddit threads to fix tracking issues in public. That is standard fintech hygiene the company visibly lacks. Claim and service whatever review surface exists on Seedly, and never again solicit an app review burst. The cluster of near-identical 5-star reviews from the middle of February 2025 is plainly visible in the data to anyone who looks, and this market looks. Finally, measurement, because a strategy that is 80% behavior needs instruments that measure behavior. The master metric is binary and brutal. Surprise changes since the policy published. The target is 0, and any devaluation shipped with less than the committed notice period is a program failure, regardless of everything else on the dashboard. Below that sit the rest. Time to coverage of partner additions across the 4 Tier 1 outlets, which measures whether the supply machine works. Adjust attributed installs and their 90-day retention against organic, which prices the Satisfy expansion honestly. 2 dated binaries. A first dedicated mainly Miles article within 6 months and resumed Pseudosmile coverage within 12. The tone mix of Milesife's next tightening post, which will tell HeyMax whether pre-briefing changed the frame. And organic App Store review sentiment, the grassroots proxy no campaign can fake. What this means for HeyMax, and since this is a strategy chapter, I will close on commitments and falsifiers. The commitments: publish the rate integrity policy within a quarter, brief before every material change forever, spend on community and tools, never on editorial. The falsifiers are what would prove this chapter wrong. If HeyMax publishes the policy and then ships a devaluation inside the notice window, the program is falsified at the root, and no media strategy can help. If Pseudosmile remains silent 12 months after a policy plus a briefing, my repair thesis is wrong, and his defection is permanent. If 6 months of supplied, embargoed partner news moves mainly Miles not at all, the trade desk theory of that outlet fails. And if Milesife's cadence on HeyMax falls away, the problem is bigger than press relations. It means the company has stopped generating news worth covering, and no policy fixes that. Chapter 18: Banks, Digibanks, and Financial Services. Singapore's banks keep their rewards captive, and most of them have no need of HeyMax. So the financial services map is not about the big incumbents at all. That is the core claim of this chapter. The winnable territory in Singapore financial services consists of one soft target among the established banks, one crown jewel in the Digibank tier, a couple of challengers hungry for differentiation, and one side door into the biggest bank of all that is, remarkably, already open. Everything else is affiliate lane or proof by example. Start with the posture of the incumbents because it frames every pitch. No Singapore bank's points transfer into Max Miles today. Banks touch HeyMax only as affiliate bounty payers and through Visa's card-linking rails. The Transfer Hub map explains who might care. HSBC operates the broadest hub, with 16 airlines and 4 hotels. CD runs about 10 programs at uniform ratios. And then comes the cliff. DBS, UOB, and Standard Chartered sit at essentially 2 or 3 programs, KrisFlyer and Asia Miles. For those thin roster banks, the abstract pitch writes itself. One Max Miles integration buys roughly 20 programs of redemption optionality, mostly at 101, with HeyMax operating the rails, outsourced transfer partner infrastructure, with no airline-by-airline contracting. The counter-thesis is equally simple. Singapore banks buy KrisFlyer miles because customers ask for KrisFlyer, and breadth is a mile nerd niche. Both are true. Which one wins depends on the bank. HSBC is already in the funnel, which is worth pausing on, because it happened quietly. An HSBC Singapore promotional microsite pays up to 25,000 bonus Max Miles for applying for its Live Plus, Revolution, or Advance cards and linking them through HeyMax. That is the Singapore equivalent of the Hong Kong Money Hero model, except run directly with a bank rather than through a comparison site. It is an acquisition marketing relationship, not issuance, and HSBC is the bank where a deeper deal adds the least marginal capability, because it already has the biggest transfer hub in town. But it is a live, revenue-bearing precedent with a global bank, and in every other pitch in this chapter, it is Exhibit A that HeyMax can operate inside a bank's acquisition machinery. The deprioritization logic matters as much as the targets, and it starts with UOB. In the Hong Kong volume, I argued that MOX was unwinnable because it is effectively the incumbent currency's banking arm. UOB is Singapore's MOX. It runs the deepest SIA integration of any bank, the KrisFlyer UOB co-brand cards, debit accounts, and deposit products that earn miles on balances. UOB will not issue a rival-adjacent currency, and pitching it wastes credibility. Its correct use is as proof. Cite UOB in every other meeting as evidence that miles on banking demonstrably moves deposits in Singapore. Amex is deprioritized for a different reason. A closed network with global program governance and SIA co-brand entanglements, which devalued its own airline transfer ratios by 22 to 25% in February 2026. That devaluation is not an opening. Amex won't partner. It is, however, a gift to the consumer narrative. Bank points melted last year, and Max Miles held 1-to-1 across its remaining 20 programs. Standard Chartered is the soft target among the incumbents, and the case is almost embarrassing in its clarity. In March 2024, it culled its transfer roster to 2 programs, KrisFlyer and Asia Miles. It then launched Beyond, a flagship card costing 1,635 Singapore dollars a year, whose earn rates broke Singapore's general spend ceiling, but whose redemption menu remains thinner than a free HSBC cards. A premium card is a promise about optionality, and Standard Chartered's flagship cannot keep it. One Max Miles rail reverses in a single integration, precisely what the bank dismantled for cost and operational reasons. 20-odd programs restored, with HeyMax running the operations. Standard Chartered also has the most fintech partnering culture of the incumbents. It built Mox in Hong Kong, and it owns 60% of Trust Bank, which matters in a moment. The deal shape: a transfer row from its 360 rewards program into Max Miles, marketed as Beyond, finally reaching the redemption breadth its fee implies. Now the crown jewel: NTUC Link and Trust Bank, one campaign with 2 doors. Trust reached profitability in March 2026, the first Singapore digibank to do so, and announced its millionth customer in June 2026. Its entire rewards posture is built on NTUC Link points. No proprietary points currency, just the Link ecosystem of Fair Price, Cheers, Unity, and Caltex. And here is the wedge, which I consider the sharpest competitive argument anywhere in this file. LinkPoint's only aspirational redemption, the KrisFlyer rail, was devalued in July 2025 to a flat 2 cents per mile. Mileslife now advises against converting at all, in the same season that arch-rival DFI's U Coalition, that's U spelled YUU, gained a Max Miles conversion at KrisFlyer equivalent ratios. Singapore's defining grocery rivalry now has an asymmetry. DFI's shoppers can convert into 20 airline and hotel programs at parity. Fair prices are stuck on a decaying single airline rail. The pitch is competitive symmetry. On the U template HeyMax has already shipped. The obstacles are real: 3-headed governance across Standard Chartered, Fair Price Group, and NTUC's social enterprise ethos, which demands value for members framing rather than miles for the affluent. And the counterparty is NTUC Link, a separate company with Trust as the banking amplifier. The deal ladder escalates: an earn campaign for Trust cardholders, then a LinkPoints to Max Miles conversion, then the full chocolate template at million customer scale, card-linked Max Miles earn inside Trust itself. Strategic value, the highest in Singapore. The remaining digibanks sort quickly. GXS, the Grab and Singtel Bank, is the experiment-friendly one. Its Flexi card runs randomized, gacha-style instant rewards, a bank that plainly enjoys playful mechanics. Its opening is the vacuum its own parent created. When Grab Rewards became Grab Coins in November 2025, tiers disappeared, and the currency became a rebate coin with 6-month expiry, worth a fraction of a cent. The whole Grab ecosystem now lacks any aspirational redemption. A Max Miles earn month on FlexiCard is exactly its campaign grammar, and the risk is simply that Grab prefers building in-house. Maribank is C's bank, and its rewards exist to feed Shopee, Cashback plus Shopee coins. Shopee is already a HeyMax affiliate merchant, and that is the natural ceiling. Maribank is not an issuance target. Then there is U-Trip, which I rank as the top payments target in the market. Singapore's flagship multi-currency travel wallet competes purely on foreign exchange rates and fees, and it has no rewards program at all, while Revolut attacks it feature for feature with Rev Points, which transfer to KrisFlyer among other options. A travel wallet whose customers are, by definition, travelers with zero travel reward story, facing a rival that just weaponized loyalty. That is the cleanest gap in Singapore payments. The deal shape is the chocolate template at a multiple of the scale. U-Trip spend earns Max Miles natively. And U-Trip's MasterCard rails are no obstacle, because partner-side issuance is a direct commercial integration, not a dependency on Visa's interface. Revolut itself, arming in-house, is watch-only. And the side door, DBS. The biggest bank in Singapore has the least need of a partner, and its procurement is glacial. But since June 2026, U-Points convert to Max Miles at the same ratio as KrisFlyer, and the DBS U card earns 10 miles per dollar at U merchants. Milesife's phrase is the pitch deck. The U card is now, quote, a dedicated Max Miles earner, unquote. HeyMax reaches DBS cardholders today without a DBS contract. The ask, whenever the door opens, is to extend the precedent from the co-brand to DBS points proper. A group-level deal would also address DBS Hong Kong, which my Hong Kong volume flagged as the best-fit incumbent there, especially after Ascenda armed DBS Hong Kong with a transfer product in April 2026. Which is the shadow over this whole chapter. Ascenda's Transfer Connect can hand any of these banks a HeyMax equivalent transfer capability overnight. Every quarter a bank on this list goes unsigned is a quarter Ascenda could sign it instead. What this means for HeyMax, the financial services map is short and legible. Standard Chartered is the cheapest capability upgrade in the market. Trust and NTUC Link are the highest value target, with a competitive wedge sharpened by SIA's own devaluations. U-Trip is the cleanest payments gap. GXS is a willing experimenter. DBS is a bridgehead already half-built. UOB and Amex are proof points, not prospects. And the sequencing discipline is the same as everywhere in this volume. These institutions will lend their customers to a currency exactly as trustworthy as its last surprise, and the bank pitches get materially easier the day the devaluation notice policy from the last chapter exists in writing. Chapter 19, Transport Daily Needs and the Rank 10. Singapore has no octopus, no single institution whose adoption would put Max Miles in every commuter's pocket the way one Hong Kong deal did. So the home market issuance network has to be assembled from challengers and number twos. That is the core claim of this chapter, and it comes with a twist I find genuinely satisfying. The fastest transit win available in Singapore is to re-import a Hong Kong campaign that was itself an export of Singapore's own playbook. Start with transport, because that is where the Hong Kong analogy is most literal. Singapore's octopus analog is SimplyGo, the land transport authority family that absorbed EZ-Link and TransitLink, shut the standalone EZ-Link app in January 2026, and folded everything, including a reward scheme, into one app. EZ-Link Rewards exists today. Link a card, earn points on TransitLink transactions, redeem from an in-app catalog. But the catalog is voucher grade, there is no aspirational redemption in it, and most bank cards earn little or nothing on SimplyGo spend, which makes transit the emptiest reward surface in the country. 3 routes lead from here to the MRT earning Max Miles. The direct route is the true octopus replica. EZ-Link rewards points converting to Max Miles or a Max Miles toggle inside SimplyGo. Highest value, slowest path, because a government-linked subsidiary procures even more cautiously than MTR-owned Octopus. I would budget 1 to 2 years. The fast route is the card-linked replica. Hong Kong's Visa commute campaign, which ran from April to June 2026 and paid a mile per dollar on transit tap-to-pay, was the Singapore Visa rail exported. HeyMax had already run MRT and bus campaigns at 3 to 6 miles per dollar on Visa's merchant category detection in Singapore, back in 2024 and 2025. Rerunning it at home, as a standing program, requires no SimplyGo procurement at all. Visa is already in the network, and Singapore Transit accepts contactless bank cards on coded merchant categories. And the third route already exists indirectly. The DBS U card, that's U spelled YUU, earns U points on SimplyGo transit spend, and U points have converted to Max Miles since June 2026. A transit to Max Miles path is quietly live today. Nobody has marketed it. The rest of ground transport is in flux, which is exactly what makes it winnable. Comfort Del Gro shut down its tiered Zig Rewards program in February 2025 and consolidated back onto Comfort Points. And a loyalty operation that just retreated is a loyalty operation open to outsourced ambition. Comfort Del Gro fights Grab on trust and price, with no aspirational hook at all, and Taxi Rides earning max miles is a differentiator Grab coins structurally cannot match, because Grab converted its own rewards into a rebate coin with 6-month expiry in November 2025. Gojek, already inside the U Coalition, is upgradable from coalition member to direct campaign partner. And at the logo collection end, BlueSG relaunched as Flexar in May 2026. A relaunching brand will take an acquisition hook cheaply for correspondingly little value. Food delivery consolidated the map in HeyMax's favor. Deliveroo Singapore ceased operations on the 4th of March 2026 as DoorDash exited 4 markets simultaneously, leaving a duopoly of Grab and Foodpanda. Foodpanda's position writes its own pitch. A number 2 that cannot win a subsidy war against Grab needs a differentiation axis. Travel aspiration is the one axis Grab abandoned. Foodpanda already sits inside the U Coalition, and because it is a delivery hero property, a single contract can cover both Singapore and Hong Kong, where my Hong Kong volume ranked it as well. 1 deal, 2 markets, doubled thesis. The daily needs layer needs its status corrections stated plainly, because my brief arrived with stale memory in 3 places. Singtel's Dash wallet was not shut down. It was sold to Western Union. A sale completed on the 3rd of April 2026, and a new owner needing engagement wins is a partnership window, though a remitter-heavy base skews away from premium travel, which keeps it on the watch list rather than the shortlist. Insterm's Amaze card was not killed but gutted in March 2025, a fee on domestic transactions, cashback removed, and it stands as Singapore's cautionary tale for interchange arbitraged miles hacks. HeyMax's issuance deals must be merchant-funded, not spread-funded, and U Singapore is not a prospect at all. It has been live since 2020, holds 1.8 million members, and has been a HeyMax partner since the June 2026 bridge. The business development task there is deepening, from points conversion to in-app issuance campaigns. Elsewhere in daily needs, Sheng Siang is philosophically out, and everyday low prices, anti-loyalty positions stated on the record. Among telcos, StarHub is the open seat, a membership program rebuilt around app perks, with no points currency and no travel hook in the middle of a price war, where a bill that earns max miles would be the only telco miles proposition in the country. Singtel is reachable through side doors. Its bills already earn you points, and it sits in the same 6-telco cross-border alliance as HKT's The Club, which my Hong Kong list ranked first, land The Club, and the alliance is a ready-made bridge. The Simba and M1 pairing is mid-merger, with price brand DNA deprioritized. In petrol, Esso Smiles passed to new owner Aster, an ownership transition window at a program that already redeems into airline miles, where the multi-airline upgrade is a natural first mandate. Shell's program answers to global governance, and Caltex comes bundled inside any NT-UC Link deal. SB Group's GreenUp offers the Save Energy, Earn Miles sustainability story at government-linked procurement pace. And one non-target must be named as such. Kris Plus and Pelago are the incumbent threat, not partners. SIA folded Pelago into Kris Plus in October 2024, stacked it into KrisFlyer's Milestone Rewards in July 2026, and was running Pelago promos at 12 miles per dollar in August 2026. The airline is building its own shop-to-miles funnel, the strongest evidence that SIA regards the lifestyle layer as strategic territory, and the hard ceiling on how complementary HeyMax can ever be to SIA itself. The Singapore network gets built from institutions whose loyalty economics KrisFlyer is failing, not from the airline's own estate. So the ranked 10, winnability weighted by strategic value, my judgment over the sourced record. Number 1, NTUC Link plus Trust Bank. The crown jewel, Singapore's largest domestic coalition, plus its newly profitable million-customer bank, with the wedge selling the deal. Link points devalued while DFI got max miles. Number 2, Utrip. A travel wallet with zero rewards program while Revolut attacks with Rev Points, the chocolate template at many times the scale. Number 3, Foodpanda Singapore. the post-delivery duopoly number 2 that needs a non-subsidy differentiator, and one delivery hero contract covers Singapore and Hong Kong. Number 4, Standard Chartered Singapore. Culled to 2 transfer partners, then launched a flagship costing 1,635 Singapore dollars a year with a threadbare redemption menu. One rail restores 20 programs. Number 5, Comfort Del Gro. Zig Rewards dead since February 2025, loyalty in flux, and an anti-grab story that only travel aspiration can tell. Number 6, Simply Go and EZ-Link Rewards. The literal octopus analog with a voucher-grade program, run the Visa commute replica in parallel while the slow direct deal gestates. Number 7, StarHub. The only open seat for a telco miles proposition, mid-price war, with a perks program that lacks any currency. Number 8, Esso Smiles under Aster. An ownership transition window at a program already redeeming into airline miles, the multi-airline upgrade is the natural mandate. Number 9, GXS. The Gacha Rewards experimenter, sitting in the aspirational vacuum grab coins created inside its own parent's ecosystem. And number 10, DBS via the U-Card bridgehead. Slowest and biggest, extend the live precedent of a dedicated Max Miles earner from the co-brand to DBS points proper, ideally group-wide. The deal shape menu underneath the list runs to 5 templates, all proven somewhere in HeyMax's own record. Coalition points conversion on the U template, card or account-linked native earn on the chocolate template, campaign-level earn on the Visa commute template, application bounties on the HSBC funnel template, and partner currency redemption on the Plaza Premium template. The sequencing logic, campaigns and bounties open doors, conversions build the network, native issuance builds the moat. What this means for HeyMax. If the top of this list lands, Link and Trust for groceries and banking, a transit rail by whichever route closes first, Foodpanda and Comfort Del Gro for daily services, U-Trip for travel money, Singapore ends up with functional parity to Hong Kong's triangle of Octopus, Visa, and Money Hero. Built not on monopoly infrastructure, but on challengers and number 2s, because Singapore's one monopoly-grade loyalty asset belongs to the airline and always will. That is a harder build than Hong Kong's and a sturdier one if it works. 10 partners with independent reasons to stay are harder to unwind than one anchor with a veto. The plan for landing it, and what I would refuse to do along the way, is the final chapter. Chapter 20, How HeyMax Wins and Defends Singapore. Singapore is not a market HeyMax can win the way I argued it might win Hong Kong. It is the market HeyMax cannot afford to lose, and the winning move at home is to build trust infrastructure before buying another unit of growth. That is the core claim of this capstone, of both volumes, really, and it inverts the usual startup instinct. In Hong Kong, the constraint was visibility. Nobody knew the product, so the sequencing was visibility first. In Singapore, everybody who matters knows the product. The constraint is that the people who know it best have spent 3 years watching it surprise them. The Optimizer Core now runs an informal credit committee on HeyMax. The risk vocabulary escalated from tracking complaints in 2023 to sustainability doubts in 2025 to counterparty credit language in 2026, Ponzi as a commenter handle, Mileslife comparisons, invocations of the monetary authority of Singapore. And the only earned mainstream editorial the company ever received, the Straits Times piece of June 2025, put the sustainability question on the record and reported that the chief executive declined to answer it. Sentiment has not tipped. My perception research was unambiguous about that. But loyalty is now conditional, and the conditions are legible. So the strategy has 3 pillars in strict order. Pillar 1 is trust infrastructure, and it has 3 components, with owners and dates. First, the rate integrity policy from Chapter 17, a published commitment to 60 to 90-day notice on devaluations and partner removals, with grandfathering norms and a public change log. Second, a customer service SLA, a service-level agreement, because the single dominant theme in the organic negative reviews is support failure. Silences of a month or more, fly anywhere partial redemption rejections. No business development campaign outruns a 3.7-star rating on both app stores, while ShopBack sits at 4.6. Third, app quality treated as strategy. The cluttered interface complaints and the balances stranded below 10,000 miles are trust problems wearing user experience clothes. None of this is glamorous. All of it is cheaper than the Series A round it protects. Pillar 2 is the reimport. The Hong Kong issuance network, Octopus Transit Earn, Visa card-linked campaigns, Money Hero application rewards was the Singapore fintech playbook exported and upgraded. The home market now needs it back at institutional scale. Chapters 18 and 19 named the doors. NTUC Link and Trust Bank as the crown jewel, with the sharpest wedge in either volume. Linkpoint's KrisFlyer rail devalued to a flat 2 cents, while arch-rival DFI's U, spelled YUU, got max miles at parity. The transit rail by the fast Visa commute route, while the slow Simply Go conversation gestates. Foodpanda on a single delivery hero contract covering both cities. U-Trip and Standard Chartered as the payments and financial services gaps. The ranked 10 is the map. The point of the pillar is that Singapore's version gets assembled from challengers and number twos, because the one monopoly-grade loyalty asset in the country belongs to the airline. Which forces Pillar 3, the KrisFlyer gap decision. The fact is canonical and load-bearing. Max miles cannot be converted into KrisFlyer miles. Mileslife restated it plainly this August, and the only indirect path through U runs at roughly 0.83 and is unfavorable. 3 options exist. Pursue a KrisFlyer partnership, dead on the evidence. SIA is building its own lifestyle funnel through Kris Plus and Pelago, and in July 2026, it gated third-party award search, in a clampdown reportedly triggered partly by HeyMax's own tool. You do not partner with a company that is actively fencing you out. Bridge, keep the U backdoor alive and honest, but never market 0.83 as parity, because this community does arithmetic recreationally. Or own the alternative, and this is the decision I would make explicitly and say out loud. Max miles is everything except KrisFlyer at full value. 20 programs, mostly at 1-to-1, while every KrisFlyer adjacent rail devalued through 2024 to 2026, Linkpoints, Amex, Atom, Kris Plus itself. The gap stops being an apology and becomes the positioning. What not to do matters as much, and I will be specific. Do not buy Amplifier Reach, the Kelvin video, the woke salaryman comic, before the trust policy exists. Amplification multiplies whatever story is running. Do not ship one more surprise devaluation. The next one after a published policy is not a pricing decision, but a self-inflicted verdict. Do not lean on HeyMax First's float as growth capital. Loyalty and Reward co-called the product, quote, an experiment worth watching closely, unquote, while flagging debt overhang and likely regulatory scrutiny, and the correct posture is to keep the float boring, segregated if possible, and small relative to revenue until the regulator's view is known. Do not chase the promised Japan and Taiwan launches on schedule at the expense of home market support capacity. The end of 2026 was the promise, and missing it quietly is cheaper than another market run on a support team that already takes a month to answer Singapore. Do not try to out-cashback ShopBack, whose audited financials show what that war costs. Do not pitch UOB, Amex, or Grab at platform level. They are proof points and vacuums, not prospects. And do not solicit another app review burst. The February 2025 cluster is visible in the data, and this market reads data. The 12 months, then, dated from where I sit in August 2026. First quarter, September through November 2026. Publish the rate integrity policy and the customer service SLA. Stand up the badged forum presence. Open the embargo channel to Mileslife and Satisfy, and the trade desk supply line to mainly Miles, and launch the standing Visa Transitern program at home. Second quarter, December 2026 through February 2027. The SudaSmile repair sequence, policy in hand. Term sheets in motion with at least 2 of Standard Chartered, U-Trip, and Foodpanda. And the NTUC Link and Trust pitch formally opened with the competitive symmetry deck. Third quarter, March through May 2027. close and announce the first partner from the ranked top 5, ship the app quality release that retires the top 3 complaint categories, and only then spend on the amplifier tier. Fourth quarter, June through August 2027. The link points conversion live, or, if link stalls, the fallback pair of Comfort Del Grow and StarHub. A second transit route progressed, and the metrics below published, ideally with a third-party number somewhere in them, because the traction ladder is entirely company-claimed, and the line about 100,000-plus app users, recycled across 19 months of press releases, has to be retired. The metrics, dated and falsifiable. By the 30th of November 2026, policy and SLA published, this one is binary. By the 28th of February 2027, 0 changes shipped inside the notice window, median first support response under 72 hours, and a first dedicated Mainly Miles article. By the 31st of August 2027, app ratings at or above 4.2 on both stores, up from 3.7, one of the ranked top 3 signed and live. SudaSmile covering HeyMax again, monthly active users meaningfully above the company-claimed 44,500 of May 2025, stated with an audit or a credible third-party reference, and no enforcement or formal inquiry from MAS touching HeyMax first. My verdict: if and only if the trust-first sequencing executes, HeyMax by the end of 2027 is the durable second loyalty layer of Singapore. The default answer to everything except KrisFlyer, institutionally embedded through coalition, transit, and challenger bank rails, judged by its home market as an incumbent because it finally behaves like one. It never beats KrisFlyer, and it never needs to. The category is different. Without the sequencing, the ending is also legible, because Singapore has seen it. Mileslife wound down holding user value, and the optimizer core has already rehearsed that comparison in public. The falsifiers, explicitly. A devaluation inside the policy window after publication, or no policy by the end of 2026, falsifies the trust thesis at the root. Action by MAS on HeyMax first, or evidence that its float is funding operations, falsifies the financial conduct assumption. Ascenda arming a major Singapore bank, the way it armed DBS Hong Kong in April 2026, falsifies the scarcity of what HeyMax sells. None of the ranked 10 signed by August 2027, ratings still at 3.7, SudaSmile still silent, that falsifies the entire home market strategy, in the market that knows the company best. And a wave of transfer partner repricings away from one-to-one would falsify the currency's core promise itself. Which brings me to the combined thesis, because these volumes were always one argument. The Hong Kong volume concluded that HeyMax could be the clear second loyalty platform behind Cathay by the end of 2027, if visibility-first sequencing was executed, with falsifiers led by Cathay repricing the one-to-one. This volume concludes trust first at home, with falsifiers led by HeyMax's own conduct. Read together, one company is running a single experiment in Asia's 2 most miles-obsessed cities, whether a neutral, independently issued currency can live in the space between airline monopolies. Hong Kong tests whether it can become visible. Singapore tests whether it can stay trusted. And both bets fail at the same point of failure, the credibility of the one-to-one. Hong Kong supplies the institutional playbook and the expansion story. Singapore supplies the cash flow, the press corps, and the license to be believed. If both sequences execute, then by the end of 2027, HeyMax is the second platform in both markets, and the 2-volume thesis stands. If either falsifier ledger fills first, I will have been wrong in public, in detail, and on the record, which is exactly where an analyst should be wrong. That is the verdict and the bet.